So I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Ashland Planning Board this Thursday evening, June 8th. And we're going to start at 7:16 p.m. with a clerk's report.
I'm going to pass on the clerk's report for this week. I believe we had one correspondence, but I have to just catch up on tallying. So we'll
Okay.
get that next meeting. Thank you.
All right. So next on our agenda is a new public comment period that we are testing as a planning board. I'm going to make a short comment and then we will open it up for public comment. The planning board prefers that project-specific public comments will be made during the public hearing that is scheduled in front of the planning board. So the purpose of this public comment is to hear general comments that may not be related to a specific project. And with that in mind, we're going to open things up to public comment. And we will ask folks who are either in person or online and are interested in the general public comment session, not related to a specific project, to raise your hand if you're online, or raise your hand if you're here in person to make a public comment. And no one is raising their hand in person, but is there anyone online who wishes to make a public comment that's not project specific?
I see one hand. Mr. Mark DeSoni. Mr. Mark DeSoni, I'm going to unmute, and can you please introduce yourself with your name and address?
Yeah,
Mark, you're still muted. Give us a moment here.
there. How's that?
Can you start
Can
over?
you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Mark Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road, Ashland, Mass. And to the planning board, I'll make this quick and I'll make this precise. I'm not being negative or anything, but it's about time another board has this public session in the beginning so that people can speak on subjects that are not on the agenda, but can also go speak their mind of how the planning board is running things and doing things on the Zoom meeting or in live person, whatever. Sometimes I think as a board may think some of these meetings goes long, but it's the reason why I think it goes long because you do on the board themselves talk and confer back and forth, but it takes an hour for the board to get through everything before the regular citizens can have a chance. Is there any way that the board can kind of cut down on the professional side of things so it could be 50% them and 50% citizens participation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That would be very challenging because we are statutorily required as a planning board to hear certain projects. And so it would be very difficult for us to create a 50-50 time frame, but we're very delighted that you and others are pleased with the public comment. Are there other public comments virtually or any hands raised?
Speaking as the town planner, and I see one more.
Okay.
Thank you. I have one more raised hand. That is Mrs. Joan Gonfride. Ms. Gonfride, can you please unmute yourself and introduce yourself with your name and address?
Yes, Joan Confrati, One Shore Road, Ashland, Mass. And I too appreciate the chance to ask a question. I think it's an appropriate question because you're going to talk about scenic roads. And I'm speaking as a personal, my own personal, but I am on the Historic Commission. And I had a question about scenic roads as to whether do we have legitimate scenic roads in Ashland, or do we have a potential list? Or, you know, I'm new and I'm trying to understand where that resides. And if you want me to wait and listen till later and answer it during your scenic roads time, that's fine too.
And just to be clear, the purpose of the public comment is more to gather public comment, not necessarily have a back and forth with the board. But I'm sure our town planner can reach out to you, Joan, and share the website that we have that has some of the basics of scenic roads and the list.
Yes, Joan, so the town of Ashland has adopted the scenic roads bylaws and regulations that come from the state statute. And we have a number of scenic roads in the town of Ashland. And I'm happy to sit down and talk with you over a cup of coffee and or over the phone or via email to explain scenic roads and how they interact with our bylaws and regulations. But we do, and it is part of our bylaws, and I can point to those. You and I can connect, and I can help you better understand what a scenic road is and what the bylaw means.
Okay, that sounds good, June, thank you. That'd be more than enough. I can send you an email and just, we can touch base. That'd be great, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And Joan, just so you're aware, in case you make future public comment, your sound was getting quieter and quieter. Are there
I'm
other
sorry.
folks online who have raised their hand to make a public comment? It does not appear so. Any folks here who wish to make a general public comment not related to a project? Okay, and with that, we're about 7 minutes ahead of schedule. We have our first public hearing at 7:30, and then we can't begin until that specific time. So I would suggest to our board that we utilize the 7 minutes to discuss the update on the housing moratorium, if that's appropriate, Peter, so that we can utilize that time
I'm going to
efficiently.
hold off on the housing
Okay.
moratorium because I think it's appropriate to wait
With-
for Tricia.
Absolutely. How
There's a
about,
couple things that Tricia
Yep.
has mentioned to me that we can kind
Okay.
of look at.
Sure.
Number one is our bios in the front of our, in our packets that we have, in our binders that we have put together. I know some have taken them, some have not edited them, but I think Tricia just wants to make sure that, as chair, and as we as a board just want to make sure they're up to date. So
Okay.
I think that's one element.
Yep.
And as you're doing that, I do have a update on the economic development tool. And I have already briefed Tricia on that, but I'm happy to brief the board.
yeah, go ahead, go for
Number
it.
one, I'm happy to tell you that I've reached out to a couple towns in the area, and it seems like we are one of the only towns in the area that actually have an economic development tool. So with that, I'm continuing to kind of do some, have some communication with other planning departments. But most importantly, I have reached out to Framingham State, MERC, which is the Metro West Economic Research Center. And Alvaro, our assistant planner, was able to attend their 30th anniversary meeting. And so he was able to go and make some connections. I've been swapping emails back and forth with the director of the program, and I have a conference call scheduled for, I believe, the 22nd of June, that we're gonna meet via Zoom. And so hopefully, we can continue to kind of have a conversation about how, if there could be a relationship built between us and Framingham State, and the development of a economic development tool. And I think, we are continuing to flesh out conversations of, do we continue to use the tool that we have, or do we kind of look into a different direction? I think it would be good to get the help of Framingham State as academics to take a look at it and do some data. Obviously, as we have looked at the tool, it's very data-driven. And so, I think we should continue to, and I will continue to go down all paths regarding those conversations. And so that is my update.
Can I ask a question about that or follow-up? Sure. So with the economic impact, to me, that's sort of a planning tool, that we are the planning board. It's very important. And obviously with the building moratorium that was not accepted, we're going to probably get busier. So I think this is hot, and I think we agree on that. My ask is to, what I believe was sort of absent from that, and it may be either related to or updating that tool, is sort of water, sewer, school, park infrastructure, like town infrastructure, police and fire. I think we sort of have a handle, but even those metrics that I believe are currently absent, and they really do have to go hand in hand with planning. If we want more housing, or we're mandated for more housing, or if the select board says we're going to comply with MBTA and there's more housing, we should not be doing it devoid of the infrastructure.
Okay.
I'm taking notes, and I concur.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have 4 more minutes. Do we want to get a scenic road outreach update?
So, yeah, behind the agenda and the letter from the Attorney General, in the 4 sets of minutes, you will find Alvaro, our assistant planner, and Anna, planning board vice chair, have been going back and forth and developing a memorandum, but also a postcard. And so Alvaro printed those out and put them in the binder. The postcard is formatted for a postcard.
It looks like this, if you're looking for it. It's like a half page.
Yeah, the half page.
Yeah.
And so we're doing that. We're working with DPW and our GIS department to get a count of abutters that live off of scenic roads. And then also, this is a memorandum that we've updated that goes to what is a scenic road. And
So Peter, just so we understand, the postcard would go to folks who live almost like a notice.
Correct.
Okay, and then the letter, would that also physically go to them separately, or is that a separate document? What
So,
would,
no, so that would go, so the postcard, the way I believe we were looking at it last, was the postcard would be sent, and I believe at this point it's about 44 cents per postcard, to all abutters that live off of a scenic way. And so we're trying to use our GIS tool with our DPW to create a abutters list.
Yep.
This hasn't been completed yet.
and what would be the letter for?
A letter would be something that would go in Michael, our town manager's weekly update.
Gotcha,
And it could be used as a basis for a, I don't wanna say a article, or a memorandum that would be posted or ran in our monthly town pages.
gotcha.
And so that is the update.
Gotcha. So I think what we're looking for is for the planning board to review these and see if you agree with the general premise. And when I worked with the assistant town planner, I essentially just edited it slightly so that the postcard focused more on compliance and less on definitions, so that, you know, the residents are being told, hey, you live on a scenic route. They can go online to see what that means. But the heart of the postcard is, hey, compliance, be aware that you will need to do an application if you want to do these things relative to trees or a stone wall. So that's the purpose of the postcard, at least in my view, to kind of bring us more towards compliance and cooperation with compliance, and obviously pointing folks towards the planning department as a go-to with questions. And I would suggest if we like it, that we approve both, and whether formally or informally. And, you know, I, for one, would offer to us that we do this yearly so that we continue to build knowledge. And I don't know about you, when I get things from the town of Ashland, usually it's bills or requests for money. So I immediately pay attention to them, but not always. And so I'm concerned that folks may not necessarily read the postcard carefully. And so maybe we can see how it goes and try again next year.
I like the postcard. I think it's great, and it also encourages them to interact. On the letter, I know it's it's like almost like a template because it might be an article. If it's not going to massively change, I think listing the streets, because some people might see a street and say, hey, you live on Cedar Street, did you know, right? Just as conversation. And right now there's no, unless...
That's an interesting idea. Like, here are our, how many scenic streets do we have? Like 12 or something?
No, I think it's about 12.
Yeah, so we could say like, hey, here are our 12 scenic routes.
and also educating people, and that this doesn't do that part about, so.
We have Cedar, Cherry. We have Cedar, Cherry, Chestnut from Maine to the Holliston line, Concord Street, Elliott Street, Franklin Street, Fountain Street, Green Street, High Street, Howe Street, from Boulder Hill to the town line, Main Street, Myrtle Street, Olive Street, Spring Street, Water Street, and Winter Street.
So what I would suggest is, you know how we have in the letter, we have our first
17.
paragraph is, what is the scenic road bylaw? Maybe right above it, we just have an earlier paragraph called Ashland Scenic Roads, and we just list them in one ongoing sentence. That way it doesn't make it 3 pages, but it lists them. And Tricia has joined us. So for Tricia's benefit, to summarize, Tricia, we had a very brief clerk's report. We attempted our first public comment, which I thought went well. And then we got an update from Peter on the economic impact tool and his reach out to Framingham State. And we just reviewed the Scenic Road postcard as well as the letter. And we were discussing adding to the letter, which is meant to be used for like Michael's newsletter, the town manager's newsletter, a list of the scenic roads in Ashland.
Oh, okay.
Any thoughts
continue.
on that, or does anyone else have any ideas? Do we need to take a vote, or do we have kind of informal agreement that this is what we're gonna do? Everybody on board? Yay? Okay. All right, I think we're good with that. And it is now 7:32, and it's time for our first public hearing. And Tricia, you wanna take over?
As soon as I can find my.
Okay, all right.
I just want to make note, all the material, all the new material for this application is in section 4 of your binder. I feel like I'm at the,
I mean, I can, if you want, I can open or start the hearing, and I think you go for it.
I think we
Yep.
just need Peter to give us an intro, update the board about where the project is, right?
Do we need
So-
to open the hearing? Do we need to read it or anything?
no, we already did that. It's only when it first opens. So we're reopening the public hearing for 50 McGonko. And since that, our last meeting, the applicants, 50, from here, represented by Joyce Hastings of GLM. Joyce is joining us via Zoom. Whoever the applicant of Mike is in the audience here from Mike's Collision. And also Chris, our property owner. So since then, the application team has met with the Design Review Committee. That happened last Thursday. What you can find in your packet, and what also was circulated to the board, was the Design Review Committee notes that were submitted to us last Friday. And so that is here in our packets. In addition, I put an email from Catherine Jerzyk, planning board member, concerning a note from the Design Review Committee's report. However, I have also today, along with Chair Kendall, spoke to Becca Solomon, our conservation agent, who has reviewed the DRC note and the plan, has been in contact with the application team, and she has drafted and/or not just drafted, sent us an email, which is dated today at 5, actually, I think that's when I printed it out, I'm sorry. It was received at 3 o'clock today, and so I can read that in the public record, and/or everyone can take a look at it. But at this time, in addition, Joyce Hastings sent over an email. This email was circulated on Friday, and they have also updated their plans. Joyce's email pretty much summarizes the changes to the plan. And without further ado, I can hand it over to the application team. And I can also, at this point, I have made Joyce a co-host. So Joyce, I know you're joining us via Zoom, but you are a co-host and you can share your screen. So please do. And I think at this point it'd be appropriate for you to walk us through the updated site plan.
Sure. So since the last meeting that we had, we continued it again, as you mentioned, to meet with the design review.
Hold on just one second. We cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me?
She's got a decent amount.
Say that again?
Should be good.
Can you hear me?
We're having a lot of time hearing her.
All right.
That's
How, I'm not sure how to make this better. I haven't had any problem. Can you hear Rob?
Yeah, it's a little better. We'll just be very quiet.
All right, so I apologize. Since the last meeting, we met with the Design Review Committee, and we also, the property owner had a conversation with the DPW director. And the result of that was that we removed the granite curbing and the sidewalk. And that was a bit of discussion at the Design Review Committee and also at the last planning board meeting. The people were generally uncomfortable with laying out new granite curbing in the existing roadway until the entire roadway was dealt with. So we have removed that from the plan. In addition, in response to the Design Review Committee, we also removed the split rail fence that went across the front of the property. In exchange of that, we added 2 street trees. We added 2 red oaks on the edge of the property. And they're located in this area right here. We have added there's a landscape bed, as we discussed, around the existing sign. And then we added 2 flowering crab. We had originally discussed a different species in this area, but that particular tree that we had discussed at the Design Review Committee would get too large. It was going to be 70 feet tall and go up to a 30 to 40 foot spread. We have a septic system in the front yard and are concerned with the roots extending into that system. So we have gone with 2 trees, 2 flowering crab that would be planted at the back end. They were hoping to provide some sort of a break up between what you can see at the street line to what you can see as you look towards the building. We kept the planting area here. We moved the 2 handicap parking spaces down to the end and aligned the paver walkway to meet the strip in the middle. And then we identified the landscape planting area around the ledge. Those are the really only changes that we made in response to the Design Review Committee's meeting, which was very thorough. And other than that, we haven't changed anything since our last discussion. Do you have any questions related to that?
I will ask if there's any questions from the board.
My question was more about the letter we got from the Design Review Committee, or the review that they made, and some of the items that they raised. I just want to make sure they've been addressed.
Yeah, we can go
Yeah.
through those.
At some point.
Yep. If there's no direct questions about the presentation,
Oh,
we can go right
sure.
into questions about that. So, and some of this has to do with the things that Peter and I discussed with Becca this afternoon, or late this afternoon. So we're just going to go through some of the questions that, some of the unresolved things, I think, that the Design Review Committee left as questions to the Planning Board. The first one of those was the Design Review Committee was wondering if there had been an increase of impervious surface for the proposed parking spaces. And so that was one of the questions that we did talk to Becca Solomon about, and about the Conservation Commission. And she had noted that they had looked at it. If you go out to the site, it's really hard to determine, what's there and what's not there. But
we discussed the impervious area at your last hearing and at the Design Review.
Yes, I understand. We're just going through the
Okay.
notes that the Design Review Committee has given to us to make sure that their concerns were addressed.
Okay.
But obviously, if you have input, you can let us know. So what Becca did is to show us, because I had a question, because it's very hard to tell what's out there. She had actually looked back at an aerial image that's on Mass Mapping, the GIS website, and showed us that, underneath all that kind of deterioration and stuff, the parking area as shown, on the proposed drawing is basically there, as it's just so worn away and stuff that it's kind of hard to read. And so she said the Conservation Commission considers that a repair. and not a new impervious surface. Their main concern, she said, was that the back area, which is gravel, and that remain gravel and not get paved over. So, so that was the question there. A question for you, Joyce, is the main roadway and the proposed parking in the front, not the back area? Right, that was the image that Becca showed us today. But is that area intended to be repaved?
Yes,
Okay. That was my assumption. But on the drawing, it says existing, and I assumed it was going to be,
it's,
Re-
the existing is underneath. What we show is the existing paving line before they removed all the pavement.
right, but it's actually going to be repaved to be a nice smooth surface again, is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
And with parking and parking lines and handicap paint and all that.
Correct.
Any questions?
So
On that?
So to the point of the Concom, that gravel in the back needs to remain, is that the existing gravel right next to the shed?
That's all of the white area in back except for the existing concrete pad.
Okay,
So-
and the applicant is okay with that?
Yep, so, and that gravel is to remain, that area is not going to be paved, kind of the parking area in back, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, and any other questions about that?
I think on that point,
Okay.
sounds like we got it covered.
Yeah, so then I think the next part was just a question about how we deal with landscape buffers in parking along the street. The zoning, I think bylaw here is, if you have it open, 5.4.1.2, which talks about all parking areas should be screened at the front lot line with landscape buffers, which shall be at least 6 feet in depth. So in this case, this is, obviously, it is a question. I read this a number of times and very closely, plus the bylaws on either side of this. And when I read that, I think this is really about parking that's actually along the street. So that you have, say, like in front of the storage facility down on 35, where there's parking actually along the street, that you form a buffer, or, you know, between the street or the sidewalk and that parking lot, versus this parking that runs front to back, and the nearest portion of it probably is, I don't know, 15 feet, maybe at its nearest point to the property line. And further than that, obviously, from the street. So, so that was my interpretation and looking at these, and especially given that it's in a industrial area, that I thought the trees and bushes being proposed were appropriate.
Quick question, Tricia.
Yep.
What is the size of the trees, the oaks that are going to be planted? Is there a plan, or did the design review committee require a specific size to begin with?
We have a planting schedule on the plan. This is the same planting schedule that we gave them, and we're providing 1.5-inch caliber, which is approximately 6 to 7 feet.
Okay.
The next question on this, that maybe isn't resolved, was about stormwater. We, again, we reviewed this, is this, I think this is on the email, right? That we reviewed this with Becca, and that there isn't a problem with stormwater, that nothing else is required on this site.
And I just wanted to comment that I agree with Trish's interpretation of the bylaw. I think that's the intent of it, especially relative to this site. So Concom is okay with not requiring further catch basins?
That's right. They talked about, or Becca talked about, that the road and the road back and the parking is really under the category of a repair, and not new impervious surface. So there really is no impervious surface, no new impervious surface, and it's new impervious surface that typically would, and I'm not even sure Ashland has this actually, at least in my scope of work, but doesn't trigger stormwater because there's not an increase in impervious surface in this proposal. Is there any?
I mean, in light of the Concom input, that makes sense. It does raise for me a blind spot, at least for me. I don't know how the rest of the planning board feels as to kind of our jurisdiction versus Concom on stormwater, and we can revisit that at some point, just to kind of clarify how do we approach this and who's supposed to define when this is available and all that stuff. But I'm good with this one.
Yeah, and I think about just what is or is not in our bylaws in general about how to deal with stormwater relative to other communities.
We may want to revisit
Yeah,
that
we may.
as a board at some point for some clarity, because for me, it's a gap in my expertise. I feel like when it comes to stormwater, I trust Concom fully, but I do believe that in most towns, there's some shared jurisdiction, and I'm not clear truly what ours is, so.
I think more the issue is that I don't think Ashland actually has a bylaw that says when you increase impervious surface by 4% or 10% or whatever it is, then you have to do this. That is present in other communities. I've designed stormwater management systems for residences in other communities, but I don't think it's on the books here, and that is something we might want to think about, and even in terms of comprehensive plan and sustainability issues, how that might come up in the future. So
I want to make clear, because I did go on a site visit, and it's pretty much gravel. So what this is based on, and I guess just, I want to be transparent to the public, if they drove down there, they would see gravel, not paving. At one point, this was permitted for paving. If it disappeared somehow, the conservation didn't matter, because at the point it was approved. Is that a correct assessment?
Becca has been to the site. I
Yeah.
was at the site today, actually, and so was talking to her about just that fact.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to read, and she affirmed that it is very disintegrated, very worn out, but that is there, and that is considered an existing condition, a impermeable surface, and thus a repair.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. If the average public drove by, I don't think you would think it was paved, and I want to be clear about that, so thank
Totally
you.
agree. Totally agree. So I think it'll look real nice with new paving. So, the next point that they were, and please interrupt me if I'm skipping, and if Kevin's still there, please, Peter can keep an eye on Kevin if he has something to add in. The next question was a walkway to the front door. I think this was just, and I think they did this in the plan, just put the walkway in the right place so that it borders the two accessible spaces. So that's very convenient. There was a question from the design review committee about if the walkway to the front door was too steep. Joyce, did you look into that, into your?
You have to unmute yourself, Joyce.
Yep, it does, it will meet the requirements, so we will provide that in the final analysis. There are several ways to enter the building, but we're gonna make this front way accessible.
Okay, I think that was just obviously probably impossible for the design review committee to assess accurately, but obviously important for accessibility.
Right.
Design review committee had suggested replacing the fence with street trees. Obviously, that was amenable to you. And the rest, I think, were I think things which you have shown in your drawings about the native species, that's kind of typical with with what we do with vegetation right now, being 70% native. Becca confirmed that the new trees proposed were on the list of approved species. I guess one question that is there going to be an irrigation system for that lawn, or is it really just, you're just watering it to?
There's already an irrigation system in place.
There's an irrigation system already there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was put in under the previous, current site plan.
Okay.
Approved.
So that's existing to remain. And then my only other question was about the sign, and that will need to go through, the signage will need to be approved in the end by Doug Scott.
Right. The final sign will be approved by, building department.
Okay. So that's my list. Maybe I'll open it up to, I see a few members of our design review committee. If any of them have further comments that they don't think were covered, I'm happy to take your comments.
Madam Chair?
Oh, yes?
I just wanted to let you know that Robert Truex from my office is here on the meeting. I'm going to have to leave at 8 o'clock, and he will take over for me.
Okay.
If we extend beyond that.
Okay, great, thank you. So anyone from Design Review Committee? All right, I also just want to open it up to public comment, because I don't remember, frankly, if I did so last time. So I'll also open it up for public comment. If you have a comment on this project, you can just please raise your hand.
I see one hand raised, Mr. Mark Dessoni. Mr. Mark Dessoni, can you please unmute and name, and please tell us your name and address?
Hey, Mark Sony, 49 Hawthorne Road. Thank you. This is a positive comment on the process I've been hearing so far. It's great to know that the boards are opening up to the public. They can hear what goes on behind the scenes. Talking to other boards and getting other comments from the different board members and emails and whatever the case may be, to make the project more presentable and easier to understand to the public who may not know as much. So my comment is a compliment to saying thank you for letting the boards, saying the boards who you talk to, and then to bring it out front to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dessoni.
Are there, if there are any other comments from anyone online? I would say anyone in the room, but I think everyone in the room is involved with the project. I'll need to see your name. I'll need to see your hand now, or we'll be moving on. Okay, seeing none. Are there any other comments from the board?
Did we address the 70% native species recommendation?
Joyce, I think everything is 70% of what you're proposing native species?
At least.
Okay.
I believe there's more than 70%.
Okay. My only remaining comment is I really like this memo from the design review. I thought this was well organized, and I don't recall seeing it in this format, and I really liked it.
I agree. It's a good precedent.
So Design Review Committee, the members that are here, please take back to your committee that we very much appreciate the organization of the notes and the clarity, and also the very quick turnaround, which was hard to do, I know. So thank you very much for that. That said, I think the next, what we could do now is take a preliminary vote, I guess, on this project. That would then allow Peter to, between now and our next meeting, to write the write the agreement, write the decision, write the conditions that we can then review and formally vote on next time. So, if you're ready.
I make a motion that we vote to approve 50 Magunka Road site plan modifications subject to be finalized conditions.
Is there a second? And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So that passes 5-0-0. So what will happen now is that over between now and our next meeting, and it's just in 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks. Peter will write the formal decision, the formal approval with the conditions that are basically spelling out the things in the drawing, the things we've already talked about already. Those will be in that document. We take a formal vote on it next time when we have the piece of paper in front of us, and then
That's what goes to the clerk's office, and then we can move forward.
then you're good to go. So, thank you. We look forward to seeing it. Peter, just while we're on the it's kind of a related discussion, can you bring up that picture that I sent to you?
Yes.
So I don't know how many of you, because for us, this is a small project, right? I don't know how many of you have driven by TJ's recently.
It's been a while.
If you go up that way.
Okay.
I've driven by there twice last week, once to take my son to the dentist, then to take him to the orthodontist. And both times, I have a picture of the TJ's outdoor seating area, which we spent a good deal of time on. I didn't go in the space, I was just seeing it from the parking lot. But I think it's eye-catching right now. And I encourage you guys to take
Eye-catching?
eye-catching.
Is it in a good way?
Yes.
Well, you know, we spent all that time making it the gateway to Ashland.
So I gave him a picture so he could put it on screen. And
I saved it, and I gotta.
Listen, we should have on our agenda a permanent bring photo of something cool that we did.
there it is.
You know what I'm saying? Immediately after the public comment.
Are you found it, Peter?
1 minute.
So we just go through a lot of these little projects, and we sometimes don't see the fruit of our labor.
We could call it the fruit of our labor on our agenda.
Oh, wow.
Lovely. Look at that.
So I am very tempted to go have lunch because it really it was just very pretty from the street and noticeable from the street. So if you get a chance, make sure, and you're driving by there, make sure you take a look.
I contact of that landscaper who chose the perfect plantings.
Yeah, it just looks
Yeah.
it looks really nice for this, what we all know is a fairly simple
Yeah.
proposal. So
Cool.
I just thought we needed that.
Yeah. Great shot, Tricia.
Thank you.
For sure.
All right.
Give it over
so-
to Mozzie. They need to compete with that. I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right, so, we do have next on our agenda, we have 3 other public hearings, which you may have already announced, or have all been continued, or all will be continued, have all requested continuances, I should say. But before we do those, I think it would be more appropriate to talk about some of the other items on the agenda, which we can take out of order, which are a discussion of our summer schedules, so we know when to continue some of these things to. And Anna had a question that maybe is worth a little discussion on the planning board, is about the protocol for issuing continuances into the future and how far. So, Anna, do you want to just explain your concerns?
Yeah, no, sure, yeah. So the way the concern came up is thinking about statutory requirements as to how we vote, right? So when you have a 5-member elected board and you need to have a quorum for certain projects, especially for special permit, but it also applies to site plan review, as Peter explained to me. Each one of us is only allowed to miss one such meeting. And if we miss a second one, we can no longer vote on that project. And so it got me thinking, because I actually have a couple of travel dates coming up for my other job, my paid job, that will mean that I'm flying during 2 of our planning board meetings. And typically I'm here and I have yet to miss one, but this will be the first time that I'm going to test how Teams works on an international flight and a domestic one. And I've been told that some airlines are forgiving and they allow you to speak a little bit. And other airlines, even if they have strong Wi-Fi, will be very upset if you're having a Teams meeting or whatever, Zoom meeting. Obviously, phone calls are always prohibited on an airline. But anyhow, it got me thinking, I may miss at least one meeting in a row. And how does that relate to all of us? Because presumably all of us will have things like that come up. And how do we work with that relative to our continuance requests? So when an applicant, for example, on a special permit, such as 1060 Main Street, asks for a continuance, the question I raised was, what power do we have as a planning board to say, okay, we're going to grant your continuance request, but we're going to make sure that it means we're not going to have a meeting where we miss one of us being present and therefore lose the ability of the full board to vote. So I don't have an answer, and I have no idea how that works. And so I raised that as a question because I don't know if we have that ability to say, well, okay, Homer Ave, you want to continue to June 22nd. Anna hopes to be available. She may not be. We prefer that you continue to August, for example. Do we have that power? And I have no idea. So I am raising it for a selfish reason because I'm impacted directly for June 22nd. But I think all of us will be impacted at some point, and we should talk about that and figure out when applicants are kind of asking for a continuance, we're going to increase the chance of the majority of us at some point not being available to vote.
I mean, along that lines, and I think it is, if we are allowed, many times we have a meeting set and then, right, they don't make
Show
it.
up.
So
Yeah.
are we allowed to sort of do the same thing? Hey, something changed on our end and we can't make it. And that would be fair. I don't think anyone likes it either way, to be honest, but I would think that has happened to us many times. So if it's allowed, we would be doing the same thing. That would not be unprofessional. I would assume we do it sparingly as well, but.
I think sometimes in that case, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, that the applicant, if we don't have a full board, if it's a special permit especially, and they need 4 votes out of 5, and we're going to have someone missing, usually the applicant doesn't want to go that day either.
Correct.
Because they don't want to delay their process or their number of voting members. But Peter, we've talked about this a little bit before, but there doesn't seem that there isn't really a written protocol for this. Is that right?
Yeah, so I haven't seen a written protocol for this, and I agree 100% with Anna. And I think the number one thing is you got to use common sense, right? If an applicant keeps on continuing and continuing, especially with a special permit, right? They don't want to go. Number one, they don't want to lose a voting member of the planning board, because if they do, that means it's going to really push the planning board and the applicant to re-notify, right? A re-notifying process can take up to 3 weeks, right? So there's really no gain in not allowing a continuance, especially when it's only going to be for 2 weeks to the next meeting, right? And I agree that, so really, I've never come across a case where an applicant was not amenable to the request of a planning board to continue it to a certain date to gain that attendance of a full planning board, right? So I agree with everyone. I think I agree with your point of view, and I think it's common sense that has to prevail, always prevails in the situation.
So what I'm suggesting is we come up with some sort of informal policy where, if we know that we're going to be absent, that we make it very clear to Peter, and maybe we track days that we believe we might be absent, and we start to essentially keep the math. So for example, I know that the Homer Ave project, I may not make it because I've got a flight, the domestic flight. I'm gonna do my best, but I may make it. And so that's my one that I'm allowed to miss, right? So in the future, and that's fine, I'll miss that one, potentially. But in the future, if there's another one that I might miss, I would prefer that we don't continue to that second one, right? And I feel like we need to start tracking that so that we don't get ourselves into that situation. We're more transparent with our applicants that, hey, one of our members cannot miss one more. And so that we start to be more cognizant of those things, more openly with applicants.
So I just want to make a note. We
Yeah.
do track this
Wonderful.
within an Excel spreadsheet. It's in here. Alvaro and I updated plenty, from planning board to, from board to board meetings, so we know exactly who has voting rights and who doesn't. Yeah.
So does it make sense to add that if you have a known, I'm not going to be there to get that? I mean, unfortunately with my work, it's more random if I'm sent somewhere, but if there's vacations, I mean, I know you don't want to be inundated, but it seems like that would be helpful in the process when we're looking to continue, if someone
Yeah.
already told
Well,
you.
that's why I
Yeah.
asked Peter to send out to ask for known, it's summer, it's going to be summer very shortly, to ask for known summer vacations, known summer travel dates, so that we can, when we do these continuances, which we have 3, we can avoid those as much as possible. There's also a little flexibility in, like, we have one gap in here somewhere, there's one of those 3-week gaps, so we could
I was-
shift our date.
I was gonna say, in July, we only have one hearing, right?
We have 2.
Oh, we
Excuse-
do? Okay.
I brought an old calendar.
Oh, okay.
But between, so our second meeting in June is on June 22nd, and our first meeting in July is on the 13th. We have 2 weeks in between. Obviously, that's going to be Thursday, the 29th, and then Thursday, July 6th.
The one problem is that I think that the school committee is here on our opposite days, right?
Correct.
They're here first and third in the room. So
They're not here on the 5th, Thursday.
they wouldn't be here on the 5th Thursday, that's right.
Yep.
So they would be having a 3-week break as well.
And don't we also have some mutual meetings with the select board on the comprehensive plan? The
I think that's-
interviews with,
So
That's next week.
The comp
Okay.
plan's been on the 3rd Thursdays of the month. Which is in the 15th, it would be June, it would be June 15th.
So, and what are our typical August dates? So we have June 22nd, July 13th, July 27th.
August 10th and August 24th.
I'm traveling on 27th July,
That's a Sunday.
July 27th is
Oh, I'm
Thursday.
sorry.
Thursday.
Thursday. Okay, so Deepa, you're not available that meeting.
and I'm gonna have a really hard time on the 13th because I'll be on an international flight. I'll do my best. So not ideal for me, July 13th.
And Peter, did you say August 17th?
No,
August 10th and 24th.
Okay, good, yeah, 17th is the only one that I have a conflict.
Okay. And Deepa, you was the 27th.
27th is bad.
It's July,
Okay.
and I'm back to Boston August 7th. So I should be here for the 10th one. Again, I'm on an international flight, I'm not sure I want to take.
yeah, Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a shot, but I'm just being realistic that
Yeah,
it's
it's-
probably not gonna
Kate,
work.
what about
While-
you?
While we're throwing out dates, because I think it's just slightly related, isn't it the 21st for interviewing
That's what
the
I thought.
consultants of
That's
June?
Yeah, that's next week.
No,
No.
Oh.
it's the following
It's
week.
the week after.
Oh,
Next week, so this next week.
I'm ahead. Okay, yeah, 21st, that's right.
Yeah,
I skipped a week.
that one I'm also traveling, but I'll be remote domestically, so it'll be fine. That has nothing to do with you guys.
And on that one, I just need to know the timing, because I have to recuse myself from the interview, as you recall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
So,
Wednesday though.
right.
okay.
You can't be there, yeah.
No, I just can't be there, yeah.
So I'm sorry, so my potential no dates are July 13th and June 22nd. Those are the 2 days that I'm going to struggle.
So you said July 13th and June 22nd?
Yep.
Okay. So, and I'm perhaps pathetically available all those days.
Well, I mean, I'll add that I think we have to be cautious, obviously, and to not abuse it. Like, it is an elected position. I take it seriously. I'm going to do my very best to be here. In these 2 instances, I had no choice because of how certain things occurred. But obviously, I'll do my very best to be here. I just think that we should be reasonable if we can. Like, the 22nd Homer Ave, I have no problem potentially missing, but I don't want to miss another one.
I don't
So-
think the applicant would want you to.
And if they don't care, maybe we can move that one to a different date.
What,
Maybe.
I think this is a proposal,
Yeah.
right? We could move the June 22nd meeting, which obviously Anna, you're not available to come to, and move it to June 29th, which is the 5th Thursday. We're not losing a meeting, we're just moving our gaps between, we're just moving our 2-week gap between tonight's meeting and the 29th.
So my question to you is, I know I lost this one when we did 1060 Main.
10 to 16 Main, yeah?
plan. So when these projects go on for a year long,
Mm-hmm.
what is that 2 meeting in a year and a half long project account? How does that work out?
So,
Is
you-
there like a,
no, it's one meeting, that's it. So what has to happen from a mechanical standpoint is we, the planning board, would work with the applicant and would re-advertise the hearing. And and so we re-advertising the hearing in the newspaper, notification of abutters, from an administrative standpoint, restarts the can restart a fresh hearing. We would do, in doing that, excuse me, we would just, read into the record plans that have been to date and what the current plan is that we're working on or working off of, I would state. So I know the last couple of projects, 501 Pond, that was a year long, 100 Chestnut, a year long. 10 to 60 Main is getting to a year long at this point. So yeah, it's,
And it's
It's-
also the case that an election might happen in that time and your board members may switch, right? So
Yeah.
there's, yeah.
you're at the I would say, and I don't think that's on the planning board. I think it's the applicant understands taking that risk.
I mean, and I'll add, we do have an associate member who is available to step in when one of us is disqualified this way,
Correct.
right? So
For special permits.
for special permits, not for site plan review. So
Correct.
this is why it's actually trickier for Homer, because Homer's site plan. So if one of us is missing more than one, then we're gonna be a smaller board. Kevin cannot help us out with that one, right? So
Just-
he,
Yeah, but just for a zone, like for
Yeah.
a voting standpoint.
Yep.
A special permit is, you need 4 out of the 5 votes to pass.
Yep.
Site plan approval is only majority, so it's just
Understood.
3 out of 5.
understood.
Yeah. Just
So,
for clarification.
Definitely, and so the applicant may prefer a fuller board on the special permit.
Correct, 100%.
So it's in the applicant's interest on a special permit to be more flexible. But it's to our interest as a board, if we want all of our voices to be heard, to be thoughtful for both, right? So I don't want to force anybody to move June 22nd to June 29th. Like I said, I'm happy to miss that one, as long as I don't miss another one. So, certainly don't move it on just for me. But
So, and that was for 9 to 40, that was for 9 to 49. Right, so I'm just starting from the bottom, 10 to 60 Main is asking for the continuance until August 10th. No one had that as a date that they know,
Yep.
that they known that they're not going to be here. So that one should be okay to accept at this
Yep.
time. The 9 to 49 was for July 27th.
that's bad for Deepa.
Bad for Deepa.
Do we need, that's a subdivision plan, do we still need, is that still the rule applies?
Majority.
Okay. But would Deepa still lose if she misses more than one? Would she lose her voting rights if she misses more than one for that one?
Yes.
Same rule, okay.
Same
And,
rule.
and as,
July 27, I'm out.
Okay.
The two people are out.
oh,
So 2 people are out.
So can we move, why don't we, can we move the definitive subdivision plan to August? It's fairly close to August.
We would just have to concur with the applicant. At that case, I, before we make that final vote, because of the time period that we have, they've given us a continuance for a final determination, I believe, to July 27th. And so I would just want to concur with that, Anna, before we move it all the way to that date.
Or
So
alternatively,
can you
if
move
we're
it up? But I think my understanding is it's actually, the continuance was for the applicant to respond to third-party questions, so
I'm
they could ask for a longer,
They could.
like, time frame. We should be asking that, or say come earlier and they're not ready, and then,
We can continue it. I just don't want to get into a situation.
yeah.
I am 100%
Yeah.
positive that they will have no issues moving it another 2 weeks. I just want to make sure that they're okay with it before we concur and move it to that date, just so we don't get ourselves in a time pinch with our dates regarding our statutorial time.
So that's what I'm concerned about, like, going back to the Starbucks, I don't think anyone enjoyed that. So if they move it, they say, okay, the time frame, we're gonna give you 2 more weeks, and then it's that meeting, we don't always get everything cleared up. I would love to say it works that way. I have not seen it work that way, so I'm not comfortable saying the extension is to that meeting, because we're putting ourselves in a box again.
no, I agree that we want that space and wiggle room. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like you said, this isn't our issue. That's GCG, they have these issues. If they want the proposal to go forward, they have to be addressed, right? Because we're not going to be voting
Well,
against.
exactly, and I haven't had a chance to look at what GCG sent, because it's still in that interim, it doesn't necessarily matter, but that could cut to the wire on us reviewing it and being happy that, satisfied that everything's answered.
I agree.
So,
I agree. And maybe it's fault on my end, but, you know, Sean, I did talk to Sean, the applicant representative, and I would just want to make sure we get that extension in with the wiggle room, you know, prior to kicking it off, so we don't get ourselves in that situation.
So that could possibly go to June 29th. I mean, and like Anna said, she can miss one meeting on the
Yeah.
subdivision and be fine.
Well,
And I-
on the Homer Ave. Homer Ave is the one that I can't make. No, the subdivision, sorry, the July 27th subdivision, Deepa and Marcelo cannot make it. This one, the subdivision, I can be
Oh,
there.
right,
Yeah.
sorry. Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
sorry.
So really, we need to move Village at Clocktown to August 10th, where everyone's gonna be there. And then if we move our second meeting in June to the 29th, that would allow 9 to 49 Homer to come back. And
June
then,
29th.
then you could make that meeting.
I could. But again, I don't want everyone to have to move something just for me. Like, if everyone likes the 22nd, I can miss one,
You can.
as long as I don't miss another one for Homer, so.
Yeah, and it seems
So if you
like
guys all love the 22nd, keep it.
it's gone to design review. It's come back from design review. So we're getting further along in that process. But on the other hand, I'm okay that there's no difference between the 22nd and the 29th to me.
Are you guys okay with that? Moving the 22nd to 20th?
Okay.
Okay. Great, thank you.
So why don't we look at moving,
I appreciate it.
moving Homer to the 29th, keeping 10 to 60 as it is, and moving,
The subdivision plan?
moving the subdivision, 16 Union Street, also to August 10th, because we're going to have two members that cannot make the 27th.
If we have a problem, should we try to move the subdivision to the 29th of June?
I don't think we have to do anything right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
I think let me work with Sean and let me get an updated continuance request.
But don't we have to go through these tonight, though, and continue them? We have to continue.
Tentatively?
Well, this one is easy. Is anyone here from
Homer?
From Homer?
No, no one's here from Homer. No one's here for any of them. So.
So would we? So how do we do that?
Let's move it to the 29th.
Mhm.
And I'll get an updated letter from Sean and just saying that
For
we can-
Homer?
Nope,
Or for?
excuse me.
Division.
For subdivision.
Okay.
And then, for
The
the.
29th of June?
For the 29th of June, then we can accept a new letter into the record and move it to August 10th.
Got it. So that way we're moving it within the statutory period.
Correct. We're moving it within our statutory time period. And then once we get confirmation, we can move it outside of it. And then we can extend, which we can extend. And I'll ask for an extension until August 31st for a final determination.
So do we need to make a motion tonight to make that happen?
So July, you have only July 13th, just one in that month.
Nope, we're gonna have a meeting on July, we can have a meeting on the 27th, but you will not be there, and Marcelo will not be there.
Yeah, so maybe we won't, depending on if, I mean, it's a three-person board isn't going to, I'm not even comfortable doing something that only requires 3 votes, with that, so. Okay, so, so that said, having that tentatively resolved, can we go through and make these
Motions?
continue these motions, making sure that we have the date right, because
Yep.
it's a little confusing.
Okay, do you want me to lead? No.
I can make a motion.
All right,
So I'll make a motion to move the 16 Union Street definitive subdivision plan from today to June 29th, and also seek cooperation to eventually move it to August 10th.
a second,
Second?
and a roll call vote,
Deepa Venkateswaran.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
and Tricia Kendall, aye. Okay, the next one is 9 to 49 Homer Avenue. They requested the continuance to June 22nd.
I'll make a motion that since we decided we will not have a meeting on June 22nd, and instead we're only meeting on June 29th, that we move 9 to 49 Homer Ave site plan and special permit application to June 29th, assuming we're going to notify the applicant and the applicant becomes aware that we no longer have a meeting on June 22nd.
Notification.
Before we vote, can we, I recall that we were cutting it somewhat close to a deadline on that one as well. Does
I'll check
pushing it,
into it, yep.
does the 29th will be all right with that then?
I believe so, yeah.
I'll second.
All right, and a roll call vote,
Deepa Venkateswaran.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
and Tricia Kendall, aye. And then the 10 to 60 Main Street, which is good on August 10th.
I'll make a motion to move the 1060 Main Street to the August 10th date as requested by the applicant.
And a second,
Second that.
roll call vote,
Deepa Venkateswaran.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
and Tricia Kendall, aye. So everyone, just mark your calendars that we will be meeting on June 29th, not June 22nd, which may be nice because we are having the joint meeting with the Select Board on the 21st. So,
Wonderful.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are still going to get to this MBA presentation, which I think is important. But slightly related to some of these things, I did want to take a few minutes to talk about the associate position on the board. That associate position does expire at the end of this month. It was this position is on 3-year terms, but it's not from when you occupy the seat. It's from when the position was actually created, right? So when Kevin came aboard, it was kind of a 1.5-year term, and now that term is expiring, and then it would be a 3-year term. I have talked to Kevin, who, as you know, has a very rigorous schedule right now and a baby at home, and so he is looking that he cannot renew at this time, and I wanted to turn it over to him. Kevin, you're on.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, like you said, as much as I've enjoyed the time and the work, and you guys are all excellent to work with there. I think for at this point in my life, with my busy work schedule and the baby at home, I just don't quite have the time to seek that additional term. So, yeah, I guess that's it.
So I have already let Kevin know that we have greatly appreciated his point of view, which is unique on our board, and I hate to lose him, but I totally understand how it is to be with kids that young and a demanding job like that, and I certainly expect him to be reappearing at some time on a board or committee or something in the future. So,
Tricia, what is the process, and do we know, or do you know of people that would be interested in applying to be?
well, a couple things. First of all, I don't think we're in a rush. We don't have to fill it. It's not a position that has to be filled.
Okay.
In fact, Kevin is the first one I've worked with in my time on the board as having an associate member. That said, I think it's been great to have an associate member.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to feel rushed, but I think the process would be equally about, the process with Kevin is that we put a notice
Advertisement.
out. We talk to people we think might, now that we understand the value of that seat and what maybe we might be looking for in a board, we might reach out to people that we think would be a good fit. So there'd be the same kind of talent form process. It's a joint appointment with the select board. So it would be similar to, it'd be that process over again, except it would be really for a 3-year term, because now we're at the start of the 3 years.
I mean, what I'll say is I think Kevin came on board because I was disqualified from a couple of projects, right? I don't remember the exact way I think that's where we were. We were basically looking at a bunch of special permits where we were a 4-member board because I could not serve. And I think that's going to happen again. The building moratorium is gone. And there's a couple of projects, not on 126, that disappeared when the building moratorium appeared, that I presume will be back, that I will be disqualified from. And in fact, I think, Kate, you might be disqualified from. So I'm thinking we may need 2 associate members.
I don't think we can.
We can't.
We're not allowed by state law
In
on
that
our
case,
board, yeah.
in that case, we definitely will need 1. Because if the project at Shaw's comes back, I think we're both disqualified.
No.
Just me? Okay. For some reason, then just me. So I would suggest we put some speed on it in light of the building moratorium being out.
So I also have a comment. I over my time in town, I pay attention to politics and watch the board. And before I was on the board, I very much appreciate that Kevin, as an associate, was present and assisting in reviewing. And that's not, I think, always how the board has used that role or asked for it. So my preference as a board member would be, I would seek that. I guess I would want to see what the board said, but if we agree, then maybe we can at least put that as a preference to have an active.
Rather than someone who just comes in for one project.
Right. I think it maybe depends, but I would go with the consensus of the board. I'm just throwing it out there as my idea that I think that was a valuable add to our board.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think we'd be looking to fill that seat as with Kevin, that's someone that really ideally adds to our conversation and isn't just filling a seat. Mm-hmm. And so in that case, having that person be, an active member that's willing to put in their expertise on every project would be the ideal situation.
So I'll say we had some incredible candidates for the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, some of whom were architects or who had interest in design and planning in a very vigorous fashion. And so I don't think we would have any trouble finding candidates to fill an associate role
But
from that
I was
pool.
gonna ask in terms of the expertise, because yeah, somebody active is great. And that, do we have any latitude to ask for a specific layer, type of expertise? It would be great, like, and one of the things that I'm very grateful to Kevin about is that he complemented a lot of the conversation that we have because of his experience with site construction infrastructure and a different set of eyes on things that we don't see. It would be great to have somebody that complements us that way, but I don't know if we can request it.
I think it's kind of unprecedented. I don't think there's a precedent set for that, but I think as a board, we can certainly, whether we do it in the interview process or before, if we have some sense as who we as a group, knowing our own strengths and weaknesses, who as a group would be looking to fill that seat, we'd be looking for that in the candidates, whether it's put out there in the application or notice, or not, you know, but we might, a candidate or hopefully more than one would stand out to us because they're able to offer certain kinds of expertise that we'd be looking for. And we can have that discussion at some point about what's missing. you know.
Well, I think there's lots of expertise, like it wouldn't, I mean, Kevin's skills have been great, but I can see someone being equally of a deficit of the board, right?
We have
Of
many
Yes.
deficits.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
second that.
Yeah,
Yeah, not implying that we're looking for another Kevin. He's irreplaceable.
exactly.
But to understand what we might be looking for.
But I think if we're actually putting an advertisement, we can kind of steer some language that way, right? Complementary to current. like,
So why don't we do this?
areas of
We're going to have
expertise,
to make a
something.
talent form advertisement, right? That says, hey, the planning board is looking for an associate member. Why don't we take a stab, and I can work with Tricia on drafting something like an advertisement essentially. And we can bring it to the next meeting of the planning board, and just like with the postcard on the scenic route, we can all take a look at it. And Tricia and I can take a shot and try to draft something that will recognize some of our strengths and some of the expertise that we're seeking. We can try that. But I agree, we have many, many deficits, and we can probably improve multiple areas. So it would be great to get someone with Kevin's expertise or other expertises that we lack.
Does that sound like a
Sure.
good plan? Okay, and then maybe
And when is Kevin's position ending?
at the end of this month.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kevin has one, we'll hopefully see him on the 29th if his schedule allows. So, and I know he's not feeling well right now, which is why he's on Zoom. So Kevin, if you need to log out, you know, feel free, so.
And I'll just say before you log out, Kevin, how much I appreciate all of your contribution to the board. And I'll add that it's not easy to be a new parent with little kids. I remember that phase. My daughter turns 18 in January, and I remember it still. So a lot of good luck to you. Hang in there, and we hope to see you back one day in some fashion.
Thank you. Maybe I'll even be in the audience someday.
Public comment at the beginning.
A heckler.
Zoom bomb.
Zoom bomb. So, okay, so Anna and I will work on that draft. If anyone has comments, obviously just, well, send them to me and Peter, and I'll pass them through to Anna. And, yeah, to get something out there, get that rolling. So then, okay, so making our way through an extreme out of order. Why don't we, just to kind of wrap up these main things, give, if Peter, before you do the MBTA, why don't we just have that quick update on the housing moratorium? I think we all got the
So-
extremely long
Memo.
letter.
So I can tell you that on May 30th, the town of Ashland received, our town clerk received a letter. I think it's all been forwarded to everybody. I also printed it out for everyone to take home and read. But it pretty much, the Attorney General disapproved our building moratorium. And so therefore, they cite some elements regarding to the rate of development bylaw that was passed in 2017, which ran to 2021. They also had a couple of cases. I'm still reviewing the document as well. I do know this kind of, now the ball kind of the ball kind of is in the select board's court. I know they are reviewing it with the town council, and that's the situation right now. I think the town of Ashland does have the ability to appeal this AG's ruling, and I think the town of Ashland, through understanding of the process, has about 60 days to file an appeal with the Attorney General's office. And so therefore, that is the next step. If there is if that avenue is chosen, that avenue, if it was chosen, would most likely be done through the select board and the town manager. And obviously, if the select board reaches out to the planning board for input and/or to discuss further, you know, the planning board will be the first to know about it. But that's kind of an update in general, you know, and the 10-page letter is 10 pages of, you know, of their reasoning, of the Attorney General's reasoning why it didn't fit the bill. So.
I did have some thoughts about this, and I don't know, Tricia, if we have time to discuss it.
We have, besides the MBTA, we don't have really anything else on the agenda,
Okay.
so I
I'll
think-
make it brief. So to me, I absolutely agree that it's up to the select board to figure out if they want to appeal it. That is up to the select board. I do think we as a planning board have some responsibility, though, on the substance of what happens if the moratorium is not there. Because we do have jurisdiction over zoning, right, and over planning. And so I got very perplexed, I would say, by page 5 of the decision that really kind of puts responsibility on us, not the planning board per se, but the town, and that includes the planning board, right? In the sense that it's like, okay, you guys could have planned and rezoned in 2016, 2017, and you didn't. You could have kind of done more planning, and now you're saying you need more time. You're sort of out of time. And that really spoke to me because I think we need to be cautious to realize that the comprehensive plan process is a 15 to 20 year ideal long-term view process. It is not a rezoning process. And we have a responsibility as the planning board to really think actively about this particular page of the decision and what it means to the public, which is that we should be a lot more thoughtful and a lot more aggressive in rezoning for our community to address the substance of why we needed a moratorium, right? As soon as
Anna,
possible.
that makes sense to me, but I think there's something, because I did read, and I don't understand legal terms the way you do, but I did read the decision and I thought about that same subject. And what came to my mind is that, as I recall, as we were going through the 501 and Chestnut Street, that everybody started getting concerned about the rate of development, and then Main Street came out and what have you. But there was something that the town approved completely, which was the overlay district over 126. And a great deal of the complaints were that all these projects were coming in the overlay district, when the overlay district was designed for that. So I feel like we cannot have it both ways. So we did some planning. This district was passed within that window, I believe, with the express intention of increased density on that corridor. And when that started happening, everybody started going, oh, wait a minute, what? So I guess as a town, we have to choose. If we plan for a district like that, we need to know that the projects will come. So I don't understand, we cannot have it both ways. That's what came to mind.
But we didn't necessarily plan for that, Marcel. I mean, we're right now under a water and sewer moratorium, and we don't have an answer, right? I mean, those are big things.
I don't think that's true, Kate, because remember that we asked that question, and the sewer was not an issue. Specifically, we were given that the rates have actually decreased. So, and I asked that question specifically because we questioned what is the data to back this up, and we were told, yeah, the schools, the superintendent of schools was very concerned, and that was kind of what convinced me that there was an issue. The sewer moratorium was a method, but there was some flawed mechanics on it.
So I'll say one thing. I looked into kind of the history of zoning in Ashland a little bit when I got elected to the planning board. And one thing that jumped out at me, and I remember this when I was in high school here, is that if you look at the history of some of our zoning, it was actually very much a partnership, for example, with the Fafford companies to create the Wildwood district, right? And we do, and I don't think this is too controversial to say, I think we have a history as a community of creating zoning together with developers. And that's not necessarily bad. It's just a fact of our history. And I think there's sections of our bylaws that are kind of stuck together in a way that maybe one piece of it makes sense, let's say to you on 126. But together with what we did in the Wildwood district, we don't have a broad definition for our entire community how these different districts fit together, because one area was thought through very well by Fafford.
Oh,
Another area
I
was...
totally agree.
Do you know what I mean? And so you might have an excellent point. Hey, 126 is a major road in your view, and what do you expect? More density. But there's others in our community who did not view that in a way that it's occurring relative to what's occurring everywhere else.
Well, but that's going to happen
So,
on any process.
absolutely.
Some people see it one way, but it was voted that way.
Was, right? And so part of the evolution of zoning in any community and part of the town meeting model is technically our people can rezone anytime, as long as we have a town meeting process. And what I'm saying is there is a reason we as a community chose a moratorium. Now that the moratorium has failed, right, the community's very recent concerns did not just disappear. They're there. And the comprehensive plan process is not going to address them. I think we have a responsibility to explore this and figure it out. The community wanted a moratorium. They're not going to get it. What are we going to do as an alternative? That's all I'm saying. I don't have any answer. I'm just saying we need to figure that out.
Yeah, I think obviously this is a hugely complex issue, that there's a lot of rights here. I mean, I think Marcelo is right that 126, that overlay district, and the money we got to redo 126 wasn't just to make it a little country lane. It was to make it a commercial corridor with businesses, with density. That's why we were given the money. So those things go along together. And like you said, it was voted on at town meeting. Those bylaws went into effect because the residents of Ashland voted for them. On the other hand, I think our bylaws in general, reading as part of my work, as you guys too, reading bylaws in many towns, Ashland's could use some work relative. Now, ours are better than a lot of towns too, but they're not the best ones out there as far as clarity, as far as really, thinking about what we want, missing pieces. I'm kind of surprised sometimes when I look, I'm like, oh, we don't have one of those, right? When I go looking for it. So there's definitely that work to do too. That said, with a comprehensive plan process going on, tackling I'm not even sure it's appropriate to attack too much of an overview of zoning changes when we're not sure what those zoning is supposed to point to relative to the results of the comprehensive plan, right? It seems to me that zoning should follow the plan, not the other way around. And so we are in this, we may have to do something before that in the next 2 years, obviously. We can't wait for that 2 years. But we have to make sure we do it very carefully when we have this other process that we...
Yeah, and it can be done in partnership, right? So,
in partnership,
if the comprehensive plan is having meetings on housing, for example, and we as a planning board choose to actively participate, whether it's Kate and I bringing information back here, and obviously Tricia cares deeply about inclusionary zoning and affordability. If we as a planning board choose over the next 2 years to be an active participant in the comprehensive plan process, and active not just listening to the data, but taking on zoning as something that's important to us, I think that we can make the comprehensive plan process much more efficient, much more effective. And what I'm saying is I think we have a responsibility, because of the moratorium being something the town wanted, if it's failing, and it's clearly failing based on this current opinion, unless we're going to challenge it, and that's up to the select board. I'm going to assume we're not going to challenge it. This is currently what the community wanted. The community wanted a moratorium. So if we're not getting it, there is some urgency, I think, for us as a planning board to become more activated, right? It doesn't mean we're going to rezone tomorrow, but I think we need to figure out what do we have capacity and interest in doing, and what can we contribute to the comprehensive plan process as a planning
Well, I
board?
think that was one of the reasons
Yep.
that on the ribbons you did on that initial calendar, it had housing was in the very first time slot, right?
Correct.
And we had talked about that at the time, that we look at housing first, because we knew those issues were going to come up just as they are. So, yeah, I mean, it gets confusing because, yes, the town wanted the moratorium. They also wanted 126, right? So they wanted both of those things. And it's, yes, they're not the exact same group of residents, but a lot of them are, right?
Well,
So-
there's one point, though, that I believe it was Kevin that made, and I think it really made a point, is that now that we're seeing the results of the zoning, people may not like it, and that's okay, and we're allowed to change it. So I don't think it's probably the right answer to say people voted for it and they're getting what they voted. Okay, we are, and now as a community, I'm seeing a lot of people that aren't really satisfied with that, and I think the planning board does have responsibility as planning board to try to do better. We're just simply representatives of the community, but to be pushing forward, I 100% agree. I think we have to do better.
But there's no black and white, right?
There's not.
There's people that may be satisfied.
Mhm.
Maybe we haven't heard of all of them because they're not as vocal. The reality is that enough people voted, but I agree that maybe some people want something different now, and that's okay.
Yeah.
As long as doesn't go counter to whatever commitment was done with the state to get.
Yeah, I think it's
grants and
just
that
a,
money and what have you.
sorry, I don't
No,
want to
that-
cut you
that-
off.
that's-
I just think it's a matter of understanding that, that it is working on things and presenting them to town meeting, and not a matter of how our board feels about it. Our job is to follow the bylaws that were set at town meeting, and we can offer changes to those, but until that happens, we follow the bylaws. That's our job, right? So, but
we can also be partners with our community, right? So I hear what you're saying. What is who wants the moratorium? But what I can say is our town manager and our community presented it to the state. So clearly the community was on board, right? And I believe we had
We
a
were
town
on
meeting
board.
on
But
it.
the
We voted.
community also want affordable housing and all the other things
Right,
that
no,
go
I
along
understand.
with that. So they want a lot of different things.
Sure,
We
there's a
all
lot,
do.
absolutely. So what I can share with you is, for example, the very first meeting of the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, and Kate was in a different group, and she can reinforce it, because all the different groups, we broke out into smaller groups, and we talked about our values, sort of what did we love about Ashland, and then the groups came together to share. And the themes were extremely common, right? I saw tremendous consensus of people coming here for open space, trying to get out of the city towards open space, towards that feeling of community was really, really important. High density was not anything that anyone put forward as something they came to Ashland for, right? Now, there's also the problem of not in my backyard, right? You can't have affordability and a need for housing without discussing the importance of density. So you've got to figure out the balance between
Sure.
these ideal things we all want, but not if they're, right here behind me in my
No,
house.
and I hear that, Dana, but
Yeah.
you put it at the beginning of what you were saying. Why people want to come here.
Right, yeah.
They're coming.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm living it right now because I live in a condo that is at the very, very end. I'm sure if you've driven by, you know exactly where I live. It's the very, very last condo. But behind me, there's this beautiful green space that belongs in Holliston, and there's a massive development going to go right there. That was just purchased by a private owner in Holliston. So it's going to be a massive development right behind me. And as you know, right in front of me will be a massive development. And so I can tell you, why did I choose that condo, the very, very last one? It was for that green view, right? And I'm not going to have that in either direction very, very soon. So I'm living it. I came to Ashland for the open green space, right, into, mind you, a Fafford community. And now there's more communities Fafford-esque on either side of me. And what I'm telling you, though, is that I'm not an isolated, concerned person in the sense of balance, right? I feel that the balance is being lost between that green space and development. And it's not necessarily just a 126 position. It's a position in other parts of our community, such as the Wildwood District, right? which I would argue is a little bit less industrial or dense. So these are important variables to finding a balance. And what I'm saying is this board has that expertise to figure out a better balance for all of us.
Just in looking though, in like the complexity in the gray area, when, especially when you, I mean, I don't think there's, I mean, there's definitely some arguments for density. Density in some areas is the reason you can have green space in others, right? But when you look at issues of community, you know, kind of things, Newton is an extremely dense community, and an extremely dense area, and it's one of probably the most community-oriented towns in the Boston area. People who live in Newton don't leave Newton, like they do not want to leave, and so I think it's important to make sure those things are being read, you know, as, you know, that community just doesn't mean this, or in this type of environment. Communities
I've
happen
always
in all
said,
types of
listen,
environments.
give me green space, give me a park in my neighborhood, give me a kid's park next to Shaw's, and I'm okay with density. I've always had the view of balance, right? I mean, I grew up in Moscow, one of the most industrial, dense cities ever. I love it, but when you go to Moscow, what you see is green space. You see like places, community builds. There's a way to do it. You can have density and green space in one location. I think we can figure this out. I don't think you can just give up one at the expense of the other.
Yeah, and I think
Isn't that what the goal of the comprehensive plan is all about, right? The master planning starts first, and I guess, isn't that where the master plan of that comprehensive plan is? I think the second step would be that you look at zoning, and how does your master plan, the wish list, kind of work with the zoning, and what are the changes? Somewhere they go hand in hand to me, and I feel like I would think that would be your first 2 years, in addition to the data collection that we all know is going to be time consuming. But I think there's going to be a wish list that this team on June 21st has as a starter, and then that's where I'm assuming they're not going to come into the town and say, here are the lists, go run with it, right? So they're going to I'm assuming that's a process that planning board is going to have a wish list, the select board is going to have a wish list, and we kind of filter it and say, this is what are your goals for the comprehensive plan. I'm not sure what the long term, what happens after June 21st. I'm not sure what, but
So,
to me in my head, master plan
yeah.
and zoning go
Oh,
hand
they're
in hand.
absolutely, they definitely go hand in hand. So like if you look at a comprehensive plan in most communities, there'll be like these goals, right, for 15 to 20 years on a page. And then on the bottom, there'll be suggested zoning changes, right? And some communities will implement a zoning implementation committee right after. What I'm suggesting is waiting 2 years when our community wanted a moratorium may not be a good way to do it. We, the planning board and the community, may want to start thinking more aggressively about zoning rather than waiting multiple years. Because if we can start that work early, congruent with the comprehensive plan process, we're more likely to have a successful implementation process.
So, when you say thinking more aggressively, what do you mean we do?
What I mean is if we don't zone for another 2 years, whatever we were trying to address through the moratorium will become more emergent. So our
But
schools
when we
will be
don't
too
zone,
small.
You mean zone the entire town, or
I mean,
how do we go about it?
evaluate. The last thing I'm saying is how we do this. What I'm saying is that we need to figure it out. We, as a community, including the planning board, need to assess. The moratorium was suggested because we were concerned about resources. That's not going to go away now. So whatever issues that felt urgent enough for a moratorium are going to become more emergent 2 years from now. If we allow the comprehensive plan to be used as sort of like, oh, we're not going to rezone until it's done, then this emergency that led to the moratorium is going to become truly emergent. And what I'm suggesting is we should give it a little bit of energy sooner than later.
So basically, it's looking at areas that allow for greater density and trying to understand and investigate if that's what we still want in the zoning, and if it's not, proposed changes. Is that?
Well, so and that lines up with that MBTA, because we still have to, I mean, I do believe the way we left it, the planning board should ask the select board if we are supposed to be going forward with that. we don't know. We know the select board complied with interim without any input from the planning board, that to my knowledge, unless that was before I was on the board, but I don't think so. And then we asked to be partners about this otherwise, right? Because that will not, that is due if we're going to comply before the comprehensive plan is complete.
Right.
And so waiting does
They're
not get
they're
us,
interconnected, yeah.
I know, but just waiting and saying zoning after comprehensive plan is not going to work, at least in that one instance. And I agree with Anna's points about the
Yeah.
whole thing.
No,
I'm
agreed.
not trying to create
No.
more work for you guys.
No, agreed.
Because
That's,
I
I mean,
wish we could just be like, oh, no big deal, the comprehensive plan, we'll figure this out.
yeah, that's why we
Yeah.
said that we were going to do the housing first.
Yep.
So, but I think, Kate, I think you had a really nice segue into this presentation that we have been awaiting for
Yes.
weeks,
Let's
really.
do it.
No one brought popcorn, but
Tomatoes,
Tomatoes, yeah. Exactly.
pressure's on. Good
This is
debate,
kind of
good
a-
discussion.
It's kind of an overview, just to get us thinking about MBTA zoning.
Do we have the slides, Peter, in here as well?
No, I did not print them
Okay,
out, I'm
that's okay.
sorry.
No, I
didn't
think you
wanna-
emailed them, so,
I emailed
Yep.
them, I printed them, I am,
thank you.
I want to print
Is that
them.
lightning?
No,
No, okay.
I don't think it was a train. All right, 1 minute. I'm trying to deal with a couple different
well, he's
things.
getting that up, so I won't, I think after the meeting minutes, I think after we do the meeting minutes today, I think we are cleaned up. Kate had noticed recently that our meeting minutes looked rather terrible, and they weren't actually nearly as terrible as they were. We were pretty
That's
up to date
great.
on all the regular meetings.
Wonderful.
But there were a lot, it was the one-offs. It was the meetings with the select board. It was the site walks that were always posted as a meeting and then didn't have meeting minutes, right? So it looked like a lot of missing teeth. So I think these are the last two missing. And that we're pretty much on top of everything else. We have a
Wonderful.
couple things in March that were joint meetings with the select board, but I think I'll have those for next meeting. Those are just in March, so then we're not behind. on-
Excellent.
And we
Anyway.
did take away the public hearings.
Yeah, we took away, sometimes a meeting was listed 3 times because of all the public hearings, so it just looked,
So we if a hearing was closed, I worked with the clerk's office, so if a case was closed, we unpublished the public hearing notice. If the case is open, we're gonna,
we had stuff from other committees posted on ours, right? So, anyway, it's cleaned.
we'll clean it up. And thank you to Cindy Livingston. So she worked with mostly Tricia and I. Okay, so just to, obviously everyone knows, and we've kind of talked about the MBTA communities. And I just want to let everyone know, obviously it's been in the news, and I'll try to update people as it comes along. Next week, I'm going to a housing conference next Thursday, so I'll grab information and I'll send it out to the board. And also, obviously, as it comes up in the newspaper, I'll try to send it out. There was an article I tried to print out, I told you about. I had a tough time printing it out off of the Boston Globe. But there was a great article a couple weeks ago in the Boston Globe about Brookline, about MBTA. They're trying to rezone their main corridor through, yeah, right up Com Ave, through their main kind of square. So everyone knows this is a topic of discussion. So here we go, without further ado. So the MBTA communities, it was part of the Mass General Law, was built into Chapter 116A. This was a part of a much bigger economic development package. So I don't want anyone to believe that this is just a standalone legislative act, right? It was built in as a much bigger piece of legislation. And it also kind of followed on the heels of the legislation which allowed the voting for a special permit if providing greater than, I believe, 25% affordable housing, to that voting protocol from requiring 4 votes now only required a majority vote, right? So it was a much bigger package. So 14 cities and towns. So all the cities and towns are kind of cut up into different segments, right? There's 14 seasoned towns that are in the inner core that are on the quote-unquote light rail, right? They're on the blue line, the red line, the green line. They have to have zoning in place this year.
Is that the blue up there?
That is the blue.
Okay.
Yeah, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. We, Ashland, are part of the 51 communities that are MBTA host services, right? Because we host the MBTA station on Pleasant Street, we are a host community. Here you can see we're in that teal area, right here, sitting under Framingham. And then all the other communities are considered, they're service communities by the MBTA. So there's different requirements for each, right? The biggest thing that affects us, and I think it's, oh, I'm sorry. Here we are.
That's better.
Yeah. So we're a teal community here, right here, Ashland. We're a commuter rail. Obviously, we have a station. Then they have adjacent communities. Adjacent community, which would be Hopkinton, for example, to the south, Holliston to the south, and to the north, Marlborough, and also Sudbury would be the closest adjacent communities. And then adjacent small communities, Sherborne, Dover, a little bit further away, along that kind of that Boston-Worcester rail line. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move stuff around. So, under chapter 3A, and that is just a kind of a note, that's kind of the hot topic, so everyone calls it MBTA. Also, as moving forward, the new slang is 3A, so it's kind of interchangeable. So if you go to any planning trainings and they don't use the term MBTA and they use the term 3A, thank me because you're up to you're up to snuff,
Yeah.
and you sound a little bit cooler at that.
Hashtag 3A?
Yeah, at that planning seminar. So the biggest thing of all elements is that the town of Ashland and all towns have to zone by right, multifamily, right? And going on to a conference that I was on actually earlier this week, run by not now the Department of Housing and Community Development. It has been renamed as the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. So that is another element that has changed as you go to planning conferences. There's no more DHCD. It's now the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. So the number one thing is, all the zoning, this zoning that has to, if we adopt, is a mathematical equation. They could not get that across the board enough. They want to know acreage and they want to know the by right unit numbers for that area, right? It doesn't matter, right, that, and I know in part of our ideas, we've said, okay, well, we're going to change we're going to change the bylaws regarding the land area in the RTD district, right? And we're going to use Cirrus, for example, right? Now, Cirrus, and it's a little bit further on the slide, it's a pretty good example, has, I think it's 28 acres, right? 28 acres of land area. And that has 398 units built upon it, right? Now, if you do the math, that's about 12 units per acre, I believe, and I could be wrong. The facts are in the slides coming up. That's great, right? It doesn't matter that there's 398 units that are been built. They want to know the acreage count and how many units can be built by right. Nope. How many units can be built by right on that acreage?
No
Even,
matter what's there.
No
Even if
matter
it's already
what's
there.
No matter what's
If
there.
it's empty or if there's a tower there.
If it's empty, if it's a tower, if there's,
because in theory, it
anything
can be
there.
brought down and rebuilt.
correct.
Okay.
So they're not worried,
They don't care if it's already there.
They
or
don't
that
care if
we're
it's
gonna
already
build it.
there.
They just essentially want an overlay district that provides by
By
right.
right, from a mathematical standpoint. It does, and so here's the thing, by right, we may get into and I think a lot of communities are gonna get into this, right? By right, they can say, okay, I have to allow X. But does that make sense? Does a developer actually build to that level?
Not
They may
necessarily.
not,
Yep.
right? If they may say, by right, you have to build in Ashland, right? And just the biggest example they use is if you're an adjacent community, right? Not depending on your size, you have to zone for a minimum, right, of 750 units. That's 15 with the 50 acres. That's 15 units per acre. So they're gonna say you have to zone for 15 units per acre over the 50 acres.
So the objective is
examples.
the unit count.
The objective
ultimate
is a unit count.
So the zoning that is being, that they would propose, that we do, would basically, by statute, say these many units
Yeah.
on
By
this
right.
By
parcel
right.
of land, by right.
But a developer may come in and say, hey, topography, this, that, the other thing, I'm gonna do 12 units, right? Under the 15, but it's still allowable for them to do by right 15.
And if
So I
you've
think-
got if you have conservation space or whatever, that's excluded from the 50 acres, I assume. It has to be 50 acres that's buildable?
Correct. Yep. And so here, so as we kind of keep on moving forward, multifamily housing, permanent by right at a minimum acreage, right? And so the district, they kind of use this example as a minimum of 15 units, right? And all the units, the 50 acres is considered the size, right? The reasonable size is 50 acres. And those 50 acres should be within a half mile of a train station
Is that
and or the train station. That is the edge of the parcel. So it just says we create
Some
the
edge.
butters.
And it can be in whatever shape you want it to be?
It can be in whatever shape we want it to be. And there's exceptions to this. And
Like you
here's-
can literally make it like a weird little thing that cuts up whatever's already there?
No, you,
No.
you can't just cut up.
No, but like,
Has to be
what I mean is
buildable.
continuous, but can you collect the 50 acres kind of, does it have to be completely,
So it's contiguous?
So it's
Is that what you're getting at?
contiguous.
Oh, it does
Okay.
have to be contiguous?
It
Not,
can-
not
it cannot be
contiguous, not
several
contiguous.
pieces.
that's what I'm trying to
It can be
figure
several
out.
pieces.
That's what
okay.
I'm
So
going
as we
after.
continue on, right, 40% of the 50 acres have to be within the half-mile buffer area. So I'm gonna call the half-mile circle around the train station, right? That's gonna be the buffer area. Well, I'll just jump ahead a little bit, right? So here's the half-mile buffer around the train station. 40% of the 50 acres have to be within that radius,
Completely within.
completely within that radius.
So
Then,
completely, is that, it cannot be the beginning of the parcel? It has to be the entire parcel?
40% have to be
40%
in.
have to be
Fully in.
within, 40% of the 50 acres, right, have to be completely within. Now,
So it's
in the
20
statute, they
acres.
always talk about this 50 acres, right? And that's the reasonable size. A town can increase, right, the number of acres within the overlay district and or a zoning district above the 50 to bring down the unit count per acre.
Oh,
we could do what? Say that again?
So you can bring down the unit count per acre
Okay.
By increasing.
by increasing the
The
acreage.
size.
so if you
Okay.
Just
had,
the formula,
if you
right?
had 100 acres, you could
Yeah,
have it
you could do more.
7.5 unit
Yeah.
count.
So, and that's what I'm understanding.
Yep.
However, here's a caveat, right? The 40% of the total of the 50 acres that have to be within that half-mile radius have to meet the overall
Density.
density, right? So in Ashland, and I'm just gonna go
So you've
back
got,
up,
okay, so 40% of 50 is 20 acres.
20 acres. So the 20 acres have to be in the district, in the half-mile radius.
And then has to be the 15?
No.
Oh,
This is the way I understand it. And this is, we're all still learning. Every planner is still learning. We're all still kind of working this out, right? So the way they created, so in the statute, right, you have to zone for 10% of your 2020 census total number of units, right? So in Ashland, we have about 7,500 units, household, I would say doorknobs, right? So 15% of that 2020 census number is 1,124. So we have to zone not for 750. We have to zone for 1,124 1,124 units. right? So that's a density of about 22 units per acre. So are the,
with the 50 acres.
if we stick with the 50 acres,
Yeah.
all 50 acres have to allow by right units at 22 units per acre.
22 units in that 50?
Correct, so
Would
if
get
we,
us to that
to
number.
get us to
20
that
units per acre
acre,
if we just do it in the 50.
if we only take 50 acres,
Okay,
it has to be 22 units per
yeah.
acre.
Sorry, I'm a very visual person.
Yep.
So I'm like drawing a big circle. If that circle is 50 acres and we stick it into that circle, it has to be 20 acres in that little circle.
Correct.
Okay. But if we kind of do this kind of butterfly effect of taking 40%, then we can spread it over the butterfly wings.
That's how I understand it,
Okay.
what we can do. All right, I've been just jumping around, so excuse me.
And don't we have by right already in that area?
So we do.
So haven't we met
when
it?
we look at the RTD district, right, we have a by right use. And we have a couple limitations. I kind of spelled this out I spelled this out within our requirements, with our real, within our first kind of pass at this, the information we submitted to the state. What can we do? Well, what can we do? Fundamentally, we can change the zoning in the RTD district to allow by right at 22 units per acre, and we have to remove a section that limits the number of two-bedroom units.
So right now, how many do we allow? What's our density right now in
It's
the
about-
RTD?
I think it's about 12 units per acre.
And you say that because that would allow more one-bedroom units, for
Correct.
example.
Correct, so in our bylaws, we put a cap on the number of bedrooms. I believe it's the number of two bedrooms, right? That goes against the MBTA regulations. So there's a couple nips and tucks that we could do in our current zoning, in the RTD district, which would open it up, and theoretically, it would have to be approved by the state, of course.
Is there 50 acres in there that's ours to zone, like?
Yes, so we own a lot of land.
Okay.
So when the town purchased that RTD land area surrounding the cap, we have a lot of land. The town owns a lot of land. Cirrus on its own is 28 acres of land, right? The Ashland Downtown Overlay District, right, running Pleasant Street, which is zoned industrial base with the Ashland ADD Overlay District. If you recall, back when we rezoned the downtown back in 2021, there's plenty of acreage. I believe it's 23 acres running Pleasant Street between the tracks and Pleasant Street, zoned industrial in the ADD district. Now, we would have to make some changes to the ADD district, right? But there are elements within our zoning, and there are things that we could do within our zoning, which I see would move us towards
Yeah.
compliance.
Is Cirrus in that half-mile radius?
Yes,
And they're already over 20 acres?
they are 28 acres.
So, in theory, that's your 20, I mean,
20%.
Is
You're
that the
20%.
RT, are they within the
40%.
RTD?
Mhm.
And what's on the other side?
So next to Cirrus is a lot known, excuse me, there's a lot two, right? Lot two, and this goes back to the days when JPI were proposing to do that for both developments, right? Lot two is the same lot area, and/or is the same lot that the town permitted Arbella at Ashland, which is a 180 unit 40B, which was done by Cirrus, which was permitted to a company called UGC. We permitted it, the zoning board of appeals permitted it, I was staffing them at the time, and that was during the summer of 2000 and, excuse me, I'm getting my years mixed up, 2021, the summer of 2021, we approved that project. That was to a company called UGC out of Troy, New York. They were gonna build this 40B development.
But
and
is
they
it
had,
zoned for
It's
density?
zoned for this, yep, nope, we would still
Not-
have to increase
yeah.
our zoning.
Yep.
But there has already been a project approved on that
Yep.
site. And that was a
Understood.
40B.
Yeah.
But
25%.
that one, well, so I guess to be clear, it's only about zoning. We do not
Yeah,
have to build
no.
it.
It doesn't
we don't.
matter.
But just to be clear, the Arbella would help with affordable housing units, but it's over 55 age restricted. It does not
Correct.
qualify for
That does
for
not,
this.
so the age restricted in that project does not qualify.
But it's already approved to be built.
It's already approved to be built.
So the fact that if we rezone and there's a project in there already that's age restricted, is the state still gonna count those acres?
I don't, that's still a question to be determined.
Okay.
So we do have these questions that are kind of out to,
Yeah.
that are
In
still
theory,
hanging
it should
out
still
there.
work because in theory, you can rebuild.
In theory, we can change the
Yeah.
zoning, that project that gets built, and you gain those acres
Right.
towards your MBTA compliance.
Yeah. Do we have any kind of, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'll wait
It's
until
okay.
you finish.
No. So I think I'm done with this slide. So the minimum density is 15 units per acre. Because we need to hit a greater number of the 10% of our 22 census housing numbers, which is 1124, our density jumps up. 20% of those 50 acres, 20 acres have to be within the half-mile district.
How many units did you say we needed?
1124. 1,124.
So we're at 75 acres, basically, at that density.
But we said we can count Cirrus already.
So we can change the zoning in the RTD district.
And keep it 50. As long as we can keep it 50 as long as it's 20 density per acre. 20,
If our,
20,
if our densities stay high at 22.
yeah, 22, sorry.
We have a 50, we can zone.
We can keep it at
We
50.
only have to zone 50
Yeah.
acres.
Or we can have lower density at a larger area.
Can you mix it up? Like, can you have, hey, this,
Yes.
yeah,
So
this
here's the
area is a
thing.
small area, just high density, here's a bigger area with lower density?
I believe so. That's
As
Well,
long
I
as-
think that's
As long
what-
as the unit count adds up.
Yeah, well, that's what,
Exactly.
I think that's what Peter was saying, if we only zone 40 at the 22 density
Mhm.
inside the circle, then outside of the circle, as we go wider, we can have less density.
Correct. That's what I believe. I could be wrong, but that's the information that I have
Yeah.
concluded. And I think we all know, I think everyone knows Emma now works on this project at the state level, so, if I'm
Good
wrong.
placement of Emma, good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, I'm blaming Emma. No, I'm just
The
kidding.
planning board is planning.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So in summary.
For the record, yes. Put
So
that in the
in-
minutes, that was a joke.
So in summary, the zoning district has to be at least 50 acres and a minimum of 25, and a minimum of 25 acres, so half of the acres, I got my numbers mixed up. And a minimum of 25 acres are within that half-mile buffer.
Okay.
If you move a district, if you create a district outside of that half mile, that new district has to be a minimum of 5 acres.
If you go outside the half mile, the new one has to be what?
A minimum of 5 acres.
At least.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
If you want to move outside of the circle, okay.
Correct.
And what kind of density can you have there?
So you have to either carry,
Yep. Like, let's say you have 40 at high density inside, 40% in the circle,
I think it's all how many units you have left.
it's how
whatever
many-
you have left.
I
Okay.
believe so. I think
Okay.
it's still to be
As long
determined.
as you're accommodating all of the units,
Yep.
you're accommodated somewhere.
So you can have multiple areas of 5
So
acres.
we can have multiple areas in town,
Yep.
right? And so we can,
Don't they have to be connected to the circle?
no.
Oh, okay.
So, however, if there's an area in town that we say, here's an area that meets the bill, right? And I think it says meets the bill, right? I think it's an area where we say, hey, we have invested in infrastructure in this area, right? This is a major high corridor, right? High traffic corridor. It has the amenities of a livable community. And this is an area that can accept a high density.
Do we have 5 acres on the 126 side? That's high density already?
That meets no,
Okay.
we do not. However, there are pieces of land, oh yes, I'm sorry, we do. 501 Pond Street. So 501 Pond Street, I'm gonna continue to go
Yeah, I
down
was gonna
this.
say, you're on
Sorry.
slide
Okay.
6, so
Sorry.
maybe
Yeah,
we
that's-
can,
Yep.
Okay, so here's our zoning map.
okay, I got the picture again.
You get the picture again.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm being too wordy. Okay. Here's our current zoning MBTA. So out of the zoning districts, the sub-districts within the buffer, only the overlay district of ADDA is close to meeting the 3A requirements.
And can you then go back and show us the ADD on the map? That's one slide up.
Yep. ADD is here with the black hash. So down in here, this over here, 10 to 60 Main Street. Also, this area in the downtown, we sit in ADDA. The town hall is ADDA, running all the way over here. Also, the land area where the Needham Bank and the farmer's market is zoned ADDA. This was back, that was probably done back in when the mixed-use development was proposed before the town purchased that property. Residential B district, so, residential B in the sub-district ADDC and ADDE do not meet the ADD requirements. They could meet them with small amendments. ADDA makes up approximately 22 acres of land that's within the buffer.
And I'm sorry, ADDA is the one that you were just showing us, that little,
Yep.
Venn triangle. kind
yeah.
of.
Yep, right, runs pretty much Pleasant Street. ADDC, it's only 2 acres, ADD, and then, okay, so here is the situation, RTDE sub-district comprises ultimately 94 acres, and that 94 acres is within the MBTA buffer. Within the sub-district, the Cirrus development already occupies approximately 28 acres of land. The other is the Nyanza site. The Nyanza site would be subcontracted from that overall due to its environmental situation.
But you could still do it in RTDE.
Correct.
Once you take Nyanza out, how many do we get? How many acres are there? 94?
That cap, I know the cap is 10. I would have to do some, I would have to kind of,
But we would be over the, over,
yes, I would have to dive into.
so essentially it could be done with one district.
This is an example of densities, which I was trying to get to. Cirrus is at 13.99 units per acre. 501 Pond Street is at 29. So 29 units, that would count for a legitimate, that would count.
Well, the fact that it's there doesn't matter. What you're saying is it's already there.
It's already
So
there.
zoning for it is going to be,
Correct.
it's going to be consistent with what's already there.
And I think this slide I put together, just to give everybody an example, I want everyone
Yeah.
to start thinking of, okay.
What's dense?
What's density,
Yep.
what density is going to meet the MBTA zoning,
Yep.
right?
The
And
501 doesn't actually, it's not in the, it's too far away.
it's too, right now,
Well,
right
you
now,
could
it's,
stick it into a 5 acre and not be connected to the circle.
Oh, I thought it still had to be touching.
no,
Nope.
no, so you
Oh.
can break out, you can create, you have to create 50 acres, but they're saying half of the 50 acres have to be within that.
You can put the 5
Oh.
acres right next to my
40%,
house.
40%.
I thought they still had to be touching.
I got this. Put
Yeah.
the 5 acres right next to my house. It's already there.
So here's the situation, ADDA, right?
Yep.
That runs Pleasant Street. ADDA is also 10 to 60 Main Street. 10 to 60 Main Street is outside of the half-mile radius. That's 8 acres of land, right? So that would still count, but it's outside. But if you rezoned ADDA, 22 acres are within, which meets the requirement, right? And then you could also pick up the other 8 more acres outside. And so you're getting closer and closer. And then you start
Are you
looking-
limited on how many acres you can grab outside of the circle?
As long as you meet the
As long as you
requirement
get the 40% inside the circle.
inside,
So let
So
me
the
ask
rest
you
of the
a-
60% could be multiple circles all over town.
at a minimum of 5 acres per.
5 acres
Yep.
each.
So you
Okay.
just touch on something that
So
I can start
50.
seeing some confluence of items, because we have the Main Street project, you
Mhm.
said that could count,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in downtown district, which we were talking, well, there's probably where density makes sense, especially closer to the station, so it starts kind of adding up.
Mm-hmm.
What happens with that application, for example? if we're gonna say we're gonna rezone for a certain allowable by
Mhm.
right, could
Like-
they stop their process and refile again with a larger project?
They could,
Exactly.
they could.
They could, on the other hand, on the reverse, if the project is approved at lesser density, is the state going to not count it? And we don't know. It sounds like we don't know that yet.
So,
They don't
so it
care
has to be
what-
allowed
actually
to be
being
built.
built.
It
Yeah.
does not
Okay.
have to be
Okay.
built.
What's built.
Right.
Okay.
They want to
Right.
know
Yeah.
what's
Okay.
allowed.
Gotcha.
So I think that
By
what I
right.
was trying to point out is that there's this, it's easy to go with the formulaic part of the
Mhm.
system, and the devil is in the details, right?
Yes.
Because you can get, we have to worry about also the scale of what's gonna end up being built, the quality of how those streets are gonna be, and how, could be super dense, but super dense could be a different height that we think should happen in the street. So it's easy to lose track of that, and it just the Main Street issue made me think of that.
But I don't think you can do the height, I don't think you can use height to solve this problem, because you still need 50 acres, right?
Correct.
No matter what.
So,
So it's not like you can make one, you can't pick a five, for,
No,
If
no,
my
I
math-
totally
yeah, if my
understand
math
that,
is
just-
right, 40% has to be within the circle, that's 20 acres, let's say,
well,
in
minimum.
there. Then you can take, you need more, 30 more acres somewhere, so you can literally pick 5 little zones in Ashland, not connected to the circle, and each one has to have 5 acres, and if one is taller than the other to build density, it's not like you still need the 50 acres, no matter what.
I get it.
so, but can't, like, so RTDE, our community for a long time, right, and this has been on the books, and we have a density that nearly meets that, which I don't understand, like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do other zoning, that's why I got on the planning board, I think our zoning needs to be updated and changed, but like, changing and eliminating the 2-bedroom, but then having that by right, because it already is,
Mhm.
why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we put the effort to make sure we're happy with that some height restrictions, whatever, and have that, and then we can get that tight, and then still along the way, where else would we might want to do? But like, you're not upsetting the apple cart of our entire community to meet something that was thrown at us without planning, because it didn't come with money to have infrastructure or more parks or more schools or more roads or more sewer, right? So that area is ready for it. We've already gotten Mass Work grants for sewer hookup when Cirrus was built. That original submission was to be on septic and have their own treatment plant, and then we got a Mass Work grant. So I like discussion ideas, you all know that, but like to be real, if that's the closest to meeting, I think that has to get the priority attention.
I think that we're just discussing and understanding and not coming up with proposals right now, right? I mean, I'm just trying to get my head around it versus finding solutions, just like, just.
Yeah,
what's
I
allowed,
know,
what's-
I guess what I'm concerned about, because let's face it, we know in our positions in government, things go slower than we want, right? And that deadline's gonna come up sooner than we want. And I truly do not want to be part of proposing rezoning without a massive public engagement about it. And that's my concern of like trying to get a handle where we want to go with this and figure out how to engage the community.
I get it, and I get that, that it's good to hear the suggestions, but from my mind, I'm just trying to digest the understanding the material, and obviously you've been thinking
guess,
about,
yeah.
you've been planning or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to digest it. You might have a great idea, you might be 100% right, but right now, I'm just digesting, and I can't put a judgment
Yeah.
call on that right now.
I mean, what I'm
So-
hearing is that there's areas of town where that could be good candidates, and we can come back to that. Why don't we finish the presentation, and then we can,
Yeah, the presentation's almost
Yeah.
done. So this example right here, I just wanted to give everyone an idea of what densities are we talking about, right? Cirrus Apartments, everyone knows them. That is, call it 14 units per acre. 501 Pond Street, we all were on that permitting process. That's 29 units per acre, right? So that's gonna be above the 22 as required. Cirrus is obviously below that. Village of the Americas, I thought this was a kind of a good example because it offers a couple different densities, right? Number one, the past phase, the last phase that we just permitted, right, which is 100 to 100 to 130 Chestnut Street, that's going to be built at a 28 acres, 28 units per acre, right? So that would be greater than what's required. The overall development with all the land area in the rear lowers that density per acre to 7 units per acre. Does that make sense? So everything pre the last application or the last phase is at 5 units. Obviously, they're kind of put together. And obviously, the project that's in front of us now, 10 to 60 Main Street, 10 to 60 Main Street at 8, right now is proposing 23 units per acre. Marcelo, I think that kind of answers your question.
Yeah,
It's right there.
is there.
It's at the number. And so the project that we're talking about would meet the requirement if,
Yeah, but there's the other hand of that, right? Because what's the size of that site?
Interesting.
8 acres.
How many acres is Village of the Americas, the whole thing?
Village of the Americas and in the entirety
Yeah.
is 70 acres.
So again, not to freak anyone out, but we could literally rezone just that one area.
No, because it's not within 0.5 miles of the
Oh.
train station.
No,
Got it.
what
So
I
only
was-
5 acres could be rezoned.
What I was getting at,
Got it.
if that is if it's a number of units per acre,
Mm-hmm.
the objective,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 8 acres there,
Mm-hmm.
and we say, what was the number? 22?
22.
So 22 times 8 is a lot more than is being proposed right now. Well, somewhat more. Isn't it? Well, maybe slightly more. I'm just saying that, I don't know what the implication was. Maybe there's none. If it's there, then that would be an ideal candidate to be included.
Which one?
Main
10 to
Street.
60.
Because the intent is to have housing close to the train station, which
And close to
is logical.
infrastructure.
But what is the 25
And
acres within the
infrastructure
buffer? What is that about?
Where?
At least half of the district, 25 acres, has to be within the buffer.
Within that half-mile buffer.
Yeah.
So I said 40, I looked at my
Oh,
slides.
oh, it's not
50.
40.
It's 50.
It's 50%.
50.
Got it.
So it's
Okay.
just a change.
And
Got it.
just to be clear, the
Thank
way I
you.
was just thinking about it is that it seems because of its location, it seems almost by default logical to me that this would be thought of what's gonna happen with the downtown, which is kind of in the process of transformation. And that's where you want the.
How many acres is Main Street right now?
I don't know.
8.
So essentially, if we rezone just that area, we have our 5.
No, yeah, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
that the philosophically, the intent of this is, I see it a little more broad than just picking a few pieces of land and making the formula work and boop, we got it. I think this could be used as a tool to really rethink what the downtown wants to be, based on everything else we've been talking about, and the comprehensive plan and everything else.
Because the ADD area with the slashes to it, I mean, that's my office building, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that's
That's-
that's the.
That's 60
United
Pleasant
Home,
Street.
that's where my office is, United Home Experts, that's the
United-
solar place.
That's your, that's
that's
solar
the-
flare, that's Worcester Air
Which one is
Handling.
that? Which area is that?
That's Pleasant
AD.
Street.
That's ADDA?
That's
AD-
ADDA.
ADD, yeah.
Yep.
And that's different from the RTDE?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is the area that
That's the
it's
Connect
it's
Church.
zoned correct, it's zoned
Very
very
closely.
close.
Mhm.
And it's mostly, I don't know, commercial, industrial, I guess.
Commercial industrial, you know, you have Connect Church, parking lot, solar flare, Worcester
Yeah.
Air Handling, 60 Pleasant Street. And then you have the residential streets of Metcalf and, I don't want to say Tilton, but
It's,
it
it's all,
runs through Tilton.
it's all between Pleasant and the train, so.
In going back to the basics here, and I think, you know, the state couldn't have done this more direct. It's all about acres, allowable units. It doesn't matter what's underneath, what's been built, that it doesn't matter, right? They see this as they're playing the long game. They're not playing the short
No, it
game.
makes
on.
sense.
This isn't gonna be the 2 to the 5 years. They're thinking the 10 to the 20 years out. How do we build how do we build units in proximity to existing infrastructure in the infrastructure of the MBTA.
But I think to Marcelo's point, we as a community have already accidentally or intentionally done some of this, right?
Yeah,
So,
100%.
So it would make natural sense for us to do this within that construct, within what we've already started, right? And so looking at density and where it is helpful, because if that's where the community has already placed it, that is where the traffic already is. That's where the human energy is. The community is already there.
It's already built.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and obviously with zoning or planning, right, is you're trying to, you're not looking at, we're not creating anything from the ground up, right? I think the zoning is meant to be built upon the historical land use and in the zoning that's already available
Yep.
within the community. So we have to, number one, say what's available, right? And how can we build upon it to obviously gain compliance?
So to me, this was a really helpful presentation in the sense that some of the fears I've heard in the community about what this means, at least for me, were minimized, because I think some of the fear I've gotten from people is, oh my God, we're going to have all this extra density. And the reality is we already have density happening, and we may already be quite severely in compliance in certain areas of our community. We already have areas that are highly dense and zoned that way, or might need slight tweaks.
Yep.
And so I think that is a really, really important element for the public to know as soon as possible, so that there's less fear around this specific concept, right?
I think what gets, and we may just want to move on, I don't know how long we want this to go, but when we look back at the conversation we just had about changing the zoning density and what we want, maybe it's so easy and it's not, not fearful for the community, starts to be confusing again, right? Because we just talked about, okay, maybe we wanted density along 126 and now we don't. Oh, but now we have MBTA that, so it's not, there's just, nothing is a gray area, nothing is an easy answer, nothing is, oh, this is the right solution, low density and no affordable housing, let's do that. There is no
definitely.
easy answer.
But like rezoning, Warren Woods is not going to happen, right? So it's not like we're going to clearly be more, it's going to be more accepting to us as a community to rezone for density where we are already having density.
Yeah, I think it is looking at, again, our master plan that arises out of our comprehensive plan, like how do we zone things for the master plan? And then, where these areas emerge, looking at a walkable downtown with density so that local businesses are supported.
Exactly.
Right? It's the first thing Beth Reynolds says, like, we can't have these little businesses that everyone wants if you people can't walk to them, because you can't rely on car traffic to come to these businesses.
Yep.
They need walkable neighborhoods, density of people living there to support the businesses.
So our deadline for this, for the MBTA, is end of next year, 2024. So essentially, it's happening. Our deadline to finish the proposal for rezoning is the end of the comprehensive plan process before any community takes a comprehensive plan and starts to implement zoning. So essentially, we will have to rezone as the comprehensive plan happens. Like, that's not a choice. We can't wait for the comprehensive plan to finish because the deadline will be literally as it's happening.
Yeah, I do know that. However, I think the comprehensive plan is going to be well on the way for us to be able to say, okay, we've learned enough to make some assumptions and to move forward. Through my previous experience, and I can say this to a fact, when we were doing the master plan at Cohasset, right? We had a master plan underway, and we had a harbor plan underway at the same time, 2 different committees, a lot of night meetings, and so, but also at the same time, if anyone knows Cohasset, there was old. There was 3 predominant properties in town. 1 restaurant right on Cohasset Harbor. And then there was an old 55-bed hotel, right? Long story short, fell into financial turmoil, and it was picked up by a local developer, right? And the local developer came to town and said, I know you, we know them, they knew us. they had people that were part of their group that were been part of the planning process. So the town said, okay, we're this far down the road. We have drafts. We know what's going on. We have assumptions, and we know where we're going. And what we had to do is we had to work with the developer to change the zoning on the fly before the town plan, before the master plan was adopted and before the harbor plan was adopted, to change the zoning, which was in tune with the master plan. And so I do believe wholeheartedly that we're gonna be far enough down the road with the master plan that we can say, we've learned enough. We know what's going on, and we understand the MBTA communities, that we need to make moves before the master plan can get adopted. But we can make moves that are gonna respect the master plan, respect the future of Ashland, but also put us in a good position with the MBTA communities.
So some of these things are already planned, right? Like the 126 corridor is already planned,
It's
right?
under construction.
No,
It's-
what I mean is the plan for it, or the purpose of it, is years old, right? There's
With-
already a definitive plan in Ashland, like Marcelo identified, that the community already approved something.
I would say yes.
Right.
I would say the Pond Street Overlay District was the ultimate.
Yeah, so there's certain pieces of this master plan that are already with us, they're already ours, right? There are certain projects such as Sierra's Apartments and presumably Main Street that essentially either already exist or are about to exist in some kind of theoretical fashion, right? Assuming we approve the project. Big assumption, but
Yeah.
it's a realistic assumption at this point.
Yeah.
As to where we are. Maybe it's all going to fall apart again, but we're moving that way. And all I'm saying is that, yes, part of the master plan process, we're going to evaluate whether we have some other idea of some other part of our community that we want to make dense. But we surely are already making certain areas dense by plan, by design, right? And that has some significance. So to me, the sooner we show the community what's possible, the more transparent we are early on in the process, the better the comprehensive plan process can be. Because as I'm listening to this, I can see, okay, the ADD overlay A, the RTD, these little 5-acre areas, whether it's Chestnut, 501 Pond, or Main Street, can easily create a solution, right, where density already exists. And that should not be a 2-year process. That should be transparent as quickly to the public as possible.
Deepa, are you trying to get in on? No? Okay.
So I agree with that, and I wanted to talk about,
It kind of boils down to the same thing.
We're looping around at this point.
on by right, and I don't know, we have to settle tonight, but by right means I design it, but I can have restrictions and say it can't be more than 3 stories. I mean, as long as it meets that formula, it has to look a certain way. The things that we, particularly the architects on the board, spend a lot of time helping we perceive the projects being better, can be written in, I think, right? And we should talk about that. But I am 100%, so with the way I look at this, it's not going to be fall town meetings. That means there's only 2 town meetings. And when there's big things that come, you saw what happened at the last town meeting. Like, people said, well, hey, I think, there's a lot of open things about this. We might have to work on it, right? We did that last year with the historic demolition delay, and people came back and did their homework. So I absolutely 100% think we have to get ahead of this, not to say that we're coming with a proposal tomorrow, but to Anna's point about transparency and start talking about this, because we work for the public, right? We need a chance for it to fail at potentially spring town meeting. I don't want to be the group that says, oh, sorry, it's fall town meeting before 24, you have to pass this. That's really crappy to do to our community.
Yeah, well, I think, Rob Shearer just reached out to me today. He's the new chair of the select board, and suggested, getting together to, start to, work together, our boards, which I thought was great, especially when we have some of these big topics coming up. So, so I think that process starts right away, because I don't think obviously it's not just our board, as Anna was saying earlier, it's going to be both boards and the whole town. So, to start that conversation and get both boards kind of on the same page, for whatever we decide to do, So, anyway.
Just a couple of notes. I just want to make a point that the the state is saying under the statute, there's no requirement to add affordable housing, but we can 10%, 80% AMI, so inclusionary zoning. And they're also starting to look at mixed use, and how mixed use works into these areas. Now, you cannot make the first floor retail mandatory. However, a community can help incentivize that first floor retail when you start thinking about these kind of mixed use areas, if that's appropriate.
And,
So,
and the affordable housing can't be set higher than 10%?
no, I don't.
Can't be.
I don't believe, no, I think they've kind of set that bar. That's what I have understood, and this was on the last call this week. So more stuff is coming out. Like I said, it's a learning. So as we also try to work with this, it's also gonna be continually a learning process.
And just to finish it up, just so I understand it correctly, so the objective of compliance is that the town is gonna get money from the state as their counterpart.
So
is
the
it?
town gets continued funding from the state.
The money we already
Oh.
get.
So.
So there's no additional funds?
Correct.
Okay.
It's an
So the state-
unfunded mandate.
It's the state, the town receives many funds, many avenues, right? We have access to green communities and chapter 90, all things. So if they're saying, if you're not compliant, don't come looking for a green communities grant from us.
And the MHP and MAPC technical assistance are both free to us.
Correct. And so I
And
think,
have we initiated that process?
so I've been going to their
Sessions?
processes, their conferences. I'm attending the MHP conference next Thursday. And so have we initiated actual funding sources?
Yeah,
I have 100% have outlined them. I know where they're there, and
Yep.
I think we're ready to go.
and what can
Um,
they give us for technical assistance? Do they actually draft up the plans for us?
It's a
or
great question.
did they
I'm still
provide-
working through that
Yeah,
process.
I saw some news articles of other communities where the technical assistance involves public forums,
Mhm.
where the technical assistance essentially creates a process of, hey, public, here's all the possibilities. And I would say we should explore that as soon as possible so that we can actually get technical support in presenting the public with these options, other than using staff, obviously, because you'll be busy with the comprehensive plan.
I heard, I was curious on that too, because I know one of my coworkers, she is on the MBT committee and she was talking about how they had interview process to get onto that. So I was curious, like, is that something that the other towns are doing, creating a task force?
Yes.
Some towns are creating a task
force.
force. Yeah, I think the number one thing is, obviously us in Ashland, we were waiting for this to come down, the Attorney General, with the master plan going on. We're going to get a consultant on board to help us out with that. I think that's another element that we need to all discuss, right? And I think the next step is, do we, obviously bringing in another, will we bring in another consultant to work us through this process? So now we're gonna have 2 planning consultants doing 2 different items, right? I think that's something to talk about, because that's double the capacity to manage, 2 processes at the same time.
Doesn't the state manage, the state provides the money, right?
Yeah,
for
but
this
the town
piece?
still manages the process, there's,
Yeah, and in
it's
the
a
ideal
huge work.
world, you would want to have,
It's a
almost
huge
like a
work.
change order, have the same consultant do both, because that would be more efficient, seems to me.
The comprehensive plan is quite intense in what the RFP involved.
It's so
I-
related.
I think adding this might be something for discussion.
It is related, and to me, I wonder, like, is that not a necessity for us? Because if this is not going through, and if we are expecting there will be projects that will come our way, the high-density conversations is going to continue big time for us, right? So
Mhm.
is that not a priority for us to have this ball rolling on having your consultant take this on, the MBTA, this one, as part of their big planning process? Because it feels like they are connected in many ways.
They're definitely connected. The thing about a comprehensive plan process is it's comprehensive. It's not meant to focus just on housing or just rezoning for the transportation piece. It's truly meant to be comprehensive, right? And there's like over 12 elements. And so I, for one, would be very cautious to put the comprehensive plan consultant in charge of this, because what that will do is pollute the comprehensive planning process. I for one would say, let's use, the state is giving us an unfunded mandate.
But-
Let's use their money for technical assistance to provide the public with options.
I think as you go through the process, it would be good to ask them.
To do what?
Ask the consultant
Ask
as you
the
get,
question.
ask their
Yeah.
opinion.
Or if there's a second
we-
consultant that
We'll
works
get
with
to
it.
in
We may learn
next 2
something that
weeks.
they-
You can-
yeah.
Yeah.
We have to come up with questions,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so it's a question, right? And let's get all the information before we decide on the perfect answer. So, all right, so in order to keep on time and get out of here at a reasonable time with a very minimal schedule, but there's some very important topics, obviously, went through today, and I was glad to have time to do them. But if we can just go on to the meeting minutes and get those taken care of. The first two, March 23rd and April 13th, are just our normal meeting minutes for those times.
I had no
Um,
changes.
March 13th was when we met with the Conservation Commission. Peter went through the housing inventory memo. Let's see, what else did we do that day? We did one approval not required. Looks like it was a lighter public hearing load that day.
I have no changes. I can make a motion if no one has changes to March 23rd. I'll make a motion to approve the March 23rd, 2023 minutes as is.
Is there a second?
Second,
And a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkata.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. Those are approved. April 13th. Let's see, so this is Homer Ave. It looks like it was just right after our site visit. We also talked about 10 to 60.
You're on the April 13th?
Yes.
So on the 10 to 60, it's actually line 70. He also noted Associate Planning Board Member Kevin McLean, a voting member for the hearing, place is absent tonight, his first absence, which that is true. Peter said that. We found out later that that was not true, that was not his first absence.
Okay.
Oh.
So we just have to put like editor's note incorrect or something, because I
'Cause it's a
support that
correct-
was.
It's a correct meeting minute, but
Yes.
wrong information.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll change that.
okay. Not that it really matters anymore.
Catch though.
I can make a motion to approve the April 13th, 2023 minutes with that change as proposed.
I'll second.
Is everybody ready? Okay, roll call vote.
Deepa Venkata.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey guy.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So those are approved. Next one are July 6th, 2022. So this was the first joint retreat we had with the Design Review Committee. And actually, we were having a retreat. We started our meeting, and then the Design Review Committee came in and joined us for part of it, and then we continued our meeting. Thankfully, because there was no tape of this meeting, and I could not find my notes, thankfully, the Design Review Committee, someone had taken extensive
Wonderful.
notes, and so
Amazing.
kind of, I was able to take their notes, gave them our notes for the January meeting. So, doing some little teamwork here.
Wonderful.
So, and again, we covered a lot of the same subjects that
Can
day.
I just say I'm shocked that was a year ago?
Yeah, that's right. I took their meeting minutes exactly as they had written them. If anyone sees something that they think was incorrect about what they said, or what they intended, we can certainly modify that, but, so I appreciated that they took those notes.
I make a motion that we approve the July 6, 2022 joint planning board design review minutes.
Second,
And a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkata.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So that passes 500. These last ones, September 14th, 2022. This was the first time we met in this room. It was hybrid, that we met actually about the comprehensive plan. It's the meeting that was a little heated, to be honest.
The one I was called a communist?
It might have been that one.
That one?
But,
I didn't have that in my notes, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I checked.
Do you want me
it.
to add it to
I
the-
checked. I think you should add it.
Just let me know where.
but,
Mr. Mignani called Ms. Tesmanitsky communist. Just, yeah, we'll skip that. Sorry.
but I think, it did.
You
start
remember
to-
that, right?
Yeah, I'm trying not to.
No response.
I'm just saying, that was unique.
So,
That
but
has
it,
never happened before.
but it did set the basic groundwork for where we went from there. So,
For the record, political refugees, my family escaped the communists.
Jen
anyways.
Ball was at that meeting, so I'm just gonna add her into it.
oh, that's right, she was. Yep. Yep.
Who? Jen
Ball was at
Assistant
the
Town
meeting.
Manager.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she was.
I'm really glad that we removed that from the minutes, just so we're clear.
I tried to have future generations be prouder of us
Well,
than maybe we actually were that day.
honestly, once in a while, I think about political office long-term in the future, and I'm very glad that that's not in the minutes.
I'm very glad there's no tape, and I think, yeah.
I forgot to download, I forgot to hit record on that one.
Yeah, I think the, not just the
We could have
one-liner,
made money off of it.
not just the one-liner, but the meeting in general is best left to history. So, anyway,
I will make a motion to approve the historic minutes of September 14th, 2022, as is.
I'll second.
and a roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. Yeah, so
the last
that's the, so we'll have next time we'll probably have some extra meeting minutes, but those would just be from this past March for these tiny little things we did with the select board on that date, March 1st. So otherwise, we're good.
So our
Thank
next
goodness.
meeting is June 29th,
Next meeting is June 29th, yes.
and then we have the joint meeting next
June 21st.
June 21st.
First, yep.
Okay.
Peter, can we confirm that that someone else hasn't booked this room for June
I will
29th?
confirm that.
Otherwise, we'll just have to be remote, I guess, but let's see if we can
Okay.
book it if it's not. Already booked.
And kind of along that line, since the sooner we can let the public know, I mean, we have regular visitors that like to hear and also just the public that it's changed.
I can
Yeah.
put a banner on the website and I'll make a change of that. That sounds
Thank
fine.
you.
Yep.
Is it June 21st confirmed?
Yes.
I think it is, yeah.
I didn't remember seeing a confirmation, but I
I-
know Alva asked about availability, but I don't think
I think it was confirmed, it was the 21st.
It's at 6 o'clock?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. I can confirm tomorrow.
So Tricia, there's a couple of things we did not review today, which is like the parking memo, the reports, future joint meeting with the Historic Commission, retreat. Do we want to just table all of those things?
I don't think, I mean, some of those things are just placeholders. Like,
Yep.
there is nothing new to report.
Yep.
I will say the CPC met this week, and we tentatively kind of had an initial vote for money for the dog park. I saw it already on Facebook being announced. So, but that was the only thing that was before, so just to report back on that.
Okay. Should I make a motion to adjourn?
Unless does anyone have anything else that needs to get me out of here?
All right, I can make a motion to adjourn at 10 PM.
Roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.